down and worship you. We glorify your holy name. We praise your holy name today.
Your holy name.
We praise your holy name today.
Blessed be the name of YAH.
We praise you today.
Hallelujah.
We praise you today. Oh, there's none like you. Oh, in all the heavens. Everywhere. Shabbat shalom, Shabbat shalom. I praise Yahuwah in my home. Shabbat shalom, Shabbat shalom. I praise Yahuwah in my home. Shabbat shalom, Shabbat shalom. I praise Yahuwah in my home. I praise Yahuwah. Shabbat shalom. I praise Yahuwah in my home. Shabbat shalom, Shabbat shalom. I praise Yahuwah in my home. Praise praise Yahuwah, Mashiach. I praise Yahuwah around the clock. Hey, Shabbat Shalom. I praise Yahuwah in my home. Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Shalom. I praise Yahuwah in my home. Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Shalom. I praise Yahuwah in my home. I feel Yahuwah in my bones. I praise Yahuwah in this home. Hey, Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Shalom. I praise Yahuwah in my home. Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Shalom. I praise Yahuwah in my home. I praise Yahuwah when I sleep. I praise Yahuwah. Shabbat, Shabbat, Shalom. I praise Yahuwah in my home. Shabbat, Shalom, Shabbat, Shalom. I praise Yahuwah in my home. I praise Yahuwah at the night. I praise Yahuwah with the sun. Hey, Shabbat, Shabbat, Shalom. I praise Yahuwah in my home. Shabbat, Shalom, Shabbat, Shalom. I praise Yahuwah in my home. Shabbat, Shalom. I praise Yahuwah in my home. I praise Yahuwah for the trees. I praise Yahuwah for the Temple City ministry. Hey, Shabbat, Shalom. I praise Yahuwah in my home. Shabbat, Shalom, Shabbat, Shalom. I praise Yahuwah in my home. Hey, Shalom, Shabbat, Shalom. I praise Yahuwah in my home. Shabbat, Shalom, Shabbat, Shalom. I praise Yahuwah in my home. Praise, praise, hey, hey, praise, hey, hey, praise, hey, hey, praise, I praise Yahuwah in my home. Shabbat, Shalom, Shabbat, Shalom. I praise Yahuwah in my home. I praise Yahuwah in my home. Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Shalom. I praise Yahuwah in my home. Good. Light.
I praise Yahuwah for his word because it's the best thing I've ever heard.
Shabbat Shalom. I praise Yahuwah in my home. Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Shalom. I praise Yahuwah in my home. Praise.
I praise Yahuwah on the run. I pray that his judgment will come. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom. I praise Yahuwah in my home. Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat Shalom. I praise Yahuwah in my home. Billy, praise Yahuwah. You know, dog with that. Hey, Yasharon. Oh, he's shameless.
That started.
You probably see the birds and squirrels and stuff.
Y'all gonna let my brother Yasharon say his praise?
Yes, praise. All day. Here we go. Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Shalom. I praise Yahuwah in my home. Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Shalom. I praise Yahuwah in my home.
Praise Yahuwah from the east. Praise Yahuwah for everything.
Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Shalom. I praise Yahuwah in my home. Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Shalom. I praise Yahuwah in my home. I praise Yahuwah because we're the best. I praise Yahuwah, you know we got that. Hey! Shabbat Shalom, Shalom. I praise Yahuwah in my home. Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Shalom. I praise Yahuwah in my home. All praises. All praises. Bring us in, sis.
That's it. Y'all,
Next got me walking.
Yahuwah got me walking.
I'ma be walking.
I'ma be walking.
Got me walking.
Yahuwah got me walking. All the way to Zion. All the way to Zion.
Singing
hallelujah, hallelujah.
You say it twice, though.
That was twice.
You said all
I
said right.
From the top. 1, 2, 3, go.
Yahoo got me walking.
Yahuwah got me walking.
I'ma keep walking.
I'ma keep walking.
Yahoo got me walking.
Yahuwah got me
All the
walking.
way to Zion.
All the way to Zion. Yahuwah got me walking. Yahuwah got me walking. I'ma keep walking. I'ma keep walking. Yahuwah got me walking. Yahuwah got me walking. All the way to Zion. Hallelujah. 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 All the way to Zion. Sing it, hallelujah. Hallelujah. All the way to Zion. Yahuwah got me dancing. Yahuwah got me dancing. I'ma be dancing. Yahuwah got me dancing. Yahuwah got me dancing. Zion. All the way to Zion. Yahuwah got me dancing. I'ma be dancing. I'ma be dancing. Yahuwah got me all the way to Zion. All the way to Zion. Singing hallelujah. 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 All the way to Zion. Singing hallelujah. 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 All the way to Zion. What do you gotta do with this? Yahuwah got me singing. Yahuwah got me singing. I'ma be singing. I'ma be singing. Yahuwah got me singing. Yahuwah got me singing. All the way to Zion. All the way to Zion. Yahuwah got me singing. Yahuwah got me singing. I'ma be singing. I'ma be singing. Yahuwah got me singing. All the way to Zion. All the way to Zion. Singing hallelujah. 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 All the way to Zion. Singing hallelujah. 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 All the way to Zion. Yahuwah got me praising. Yahuwah got me praising. I'ma be praising. I'ma be praising. Yahuwah got me praising. All the way to Zion. All the way to Zion. Yahuwah got me praising. Yahuwah got me praising. I'ma be praising. I'ma be praising. Yahuwah got me praising. Yahuwah got me all the way to Zion. All the way to Zion. Hallelujah. 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 All the way to Zion. Sing it, word. Hallelujah. 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 All the way to Zion. Hallelujah. Drummer, I was looking that day on the like, what's she doing? Got lost. Hallelujah, hallelujah. Praises be the Most High. Yes. Shema. Let's go.
You ready?
Yeah.
Hallelujah. 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 Hallelujah.
Shema.
Can the funky drummer get down one
Hey, Big Mike. We need to record this, y'all.
We got to record.
Hey, Big Mike, this should be out. She sounds so beautiful, don't you agree?
That is.
Hey, who's on the drums?
That's the chorus right there. Wow.
Say that again, Big Up.
On the drums?
Big ya.
Man.
Right? Right on point.
Hey, bless back y'all hands.
Hey, where was you at? Where was you at in Chile at the lunch table?
It wasn't allowed.
My parents
That's the only flaw that I got in her so far out, and she graduated from Perry. What?
Oh, man. Doesn't sound like she was beating on the lunch tables, though.
She definitely was.
All praises.
All praises. So, what we gonna do here? We gonna go ahead and pray in, right? Then we're gonna go over the 10 Commandments.
Okay, but Dreno got to blow the shofar, please.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so he gonna have them blow the shofar. We gonna pray in. We gonna do the 10 Commandments. We gonna do the new covenant, and then we have a new scripture to incorporate into our lessons on the Shabbat, which is Sirach chapter 11, verse 8.
All right.
So, Dreno, you want to blow the shofar, and then Brother O'Day want to go ahead and pray us in?
Sure thing, brother. You going outside, right? Come on.
Yeah.
Alert the authorities.
Get up, big boy.
Billy.
Make him up, Bob. Billy.
Billy.
Back up. Back up. Billy. Back up. Come here, God.
Blowing the shofar 7 times for the Shabbat.
7 times for Shabbat.
All right, before Brother O'Day get a prayer, I want to just to let people know. All right, so we're trying to record our lessons. We have a few people who want to see how we get down on the Shabbat, how we praise the Most High on the Shabbat. So I want to ask for those people who's on Zoom to keep your phones on mute so we can get a clean recording. Unmute your phone when you got something to say, but if you're not speaking, please mute your phone so we can reduce background noise. And also, if we all could take turns speaking so it could be very audible for the people who want to listen to our Shabbats and see how we get down.
Right.
Hallelujah.
Hallelujah. So, Brother O'Day, the floor is yours.
Yes,
to
sir.
open us up in prayer.
Let's face the east. This way, all right? This is our speed dial to our home. Ain't that right, Big Light? Where are we at?
That's right. That's absolutely right.
We face east is like a speed dial.
So for those who don't know, we face the east because King Solomon requested that whenever the children of Israel are in captivity, if they would face towards their temple, towards their homeland, and pray that the Most High would hear their prayer and answer their prayer. So we face the east because we're in the Western Hemisphere, and our temple's in the east. So we face the east. If we was south of the temple, we would face the north. If we was north, we would face the south. So we only face the temple. It's not a direction like some religions are where they just face the east for whatever reasons they do. But that's the reasons why we face the east. Hallelujah.
Hallelujah. Everybody ready? Yes, sir. All right. Balakakai, hallelujah, Bahashem Yahushua, Mashiach, Ruach HaKadosh. O Abiyah, I come boldly behind me to your throne of grace, Father. For a wise man once said, nothing, but out of the abundance of the heart, this one do speak to you. Father, I ask and I pray that you forgive me first and foremost for any sin that I have caused you or wrong that I've done in your sight, Father. Replace them with your grace, love, and mercy. And I ask to pray for my family here today, that you forgive them for any sins that they may have that have been displeasing to you throughout the week. The sins we acknowledge we do and the ones that we don't, Father. I pray that you forgive our ancestors for sinning against you by breaking the covenant commandment which you've given them, Father, after you blessed them to be great.
Hallelujah.
But Father, please take into consideration that we are in the land of captivity and we are remembering ourselves as your word said, prophecy. Father, hear us, Father, for we so desire to wish to pick up and take over where our ancestors failed at.
Hallelujah.
So hear our prayers, Father, as we in this land of captivity, praising your name, rejoicing your name, remembering your name, Father. Ask and I pray that you sweep forth your mighty hand, knock all of Satan's arrows away from us, Father, that's trying to come and destroy us, Father. And call us back to join all of our brothers and sisters scattered throughout the four corners of the earth in which you sent them, Father. Bring us back together into the land that we call home, Father. Oh, I can't wait to go home to a place I've never been, Father. When that day I'll fall on my knees and throw up my ear and say, I'm home, sweet home. I just want to desire to serve you, Father. Increase in all of us a renewed ruach that we can walk in you, Father. It feels so good to admit our faults to each other, Father. They might be hard at first, a hard pill to swallow, but once we recognize we're doing the right way according to your word, Father, it's pleasing.
Hallelujah.
It's comforting.
Yes.
And it's also strengthening.
Yes.
Father, but we are one. But we stick together. We're many members of the body, but we move as a unit in the body.
Yes.
But I ask and I pray for today that you bless my brother Dreno, Father, as he delivered this most luxurious word I've been waiting for, Father, as I like to call it, biblical imagery. But it all gives honor to you, Father, where people do not understand your total existence. They do not understand the ability to praise you, Father. They do not understand the gene you gave us to do so, Father. But today, let it be a minister to the sounds of people that need to hear this, and that they wake up and understand. And so, details, Father, the brother delivered the message, which you blessed him to give. In the name of Yeshua HaMashiach, I humbly ask and I pray. Hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah.
Hallelujah, hallelujah, and hallelujah. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and we're going to get the new covenant. I mean, the 10 commandments ready.
Screen sharing.
Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am. Okay, so like we do every Shabbat, we read the 10 commandments and then we read the new covenant. So the 10 commandments and the new covenant will be recorded by you guys over there at the House of Rice. The rest of us on Zoom, we're going to be quiet so that you guys can get a clear recording of you guys reciting the 10 commandments and then the new covenant. We're going to start off with the 10 commandments in Exodus 20, starting with verse 1. And whenever you guys are ready, you guys could go ahead. No, I'm sorry. And where it says God, we say Elohim. And when it says Lord, we say YAH.
Hallelujah.
Hallelujah.
What about the very first? Should we say and Yah or and Elohim?
And Elohim. And Elohim.
And
1, 2, go.
And Elohim spake all these words, saying, I am Yah, thy Elohim, which have brought thee out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of bondage. Thou shalt have no other Elohim before me. Thou shalt not make unto thee any graven image, or any likeness of anything that is in heaven above, or that is in the earth beneath, or that is in the water under the earth. Thou shalt not bow down thyself to them, nor serve them. For I, Yah, thy Elohim, am a jealous Elohim, visiting the iniquity of the fathers upon the children, unto the third and fourth generation of them that hate me, and showing mercy unto thousands of them that love me and keep my commandments. Thou shalt not take the name of Yah thy Elohim in vain, for Yah will not hold him guiltless that taketh his name in vain. Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. 6 days shalt thou labor and do all thy works, but the seventh day is the Sabbath of Yah thy Elohim. In it thou shalt not do any work, thou, nor thy son, nor thy daughter, thy manservant, nor thy maidservant, nor thy cattle, nor thy stranger that is within thy gates. For in 6 days Yah made the heaven and earth, the sea, and all that in them is, and rested the seventh day. Wherefore Yah blessed the seventh day and all of it. Honor thy father and mother, that thy days may be long upon the land which Yah thy Elohim giveth thee. Thou shalt not kill, thou shalt not commit adultery, thou shalt not steal, thou shalt not bear false witness against thy neighbor, thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's house, thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's wife, nor his manservant, nor his maidservant, nor his ox, nor his ass, nor anything that is thy neighbor's. Hallelujah.
Hallelujah. Hallelujah. So we're going to go on to the new covenant that we are patiently waiting for to come to pass after those days that the Most High takes us from out of our captivities, from out of the land of the heathen, and bring us back to the land that he promised to our forefathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. That day has not come to pass yet. And this is the day that we're waiting for. Whenever you guys are ready, starting at verse 31.
1, 2, ready, go.
Behold, the day is come, saith Yah, that I will make a new covenant with the house of Israel and with the house of Judah, not according to the covenant that I made with their fathers in the day that I took them by the hand to bring them out of the land of Egypt, which my covenant they break, although I was a husband unto them, saith Yah. But this shall be the covenant that I will make with the house of Israel. After those days, saith Yah, I will put my law in their inner parts, and write it in their hearts, and will be their Elohim, and they shall be my people. And they shall teach no more every man his neighbor, and every man his brother, saying, Know Yah, for they shall all know me, from the least of them unto the greatest of them, saith Yah. For I will forgive their iniquity, and I will remember their sin no more. Hallelujah.
Hallelujah. Hallelujah. And you know what? Praise Yah that the Most High opened our eyes to understand that his covenant is a marriage, where he will be our Elohim and we shall be his people. And praise Yah for opening our eyes to understand that this covenant doesn't come to pass until after we're gathered. So this is the reason why every man is still teaching his neighbor This is the reason why every man is telling his brother, no, YAH, because we have yet to reach that point. This is the reason why our iniquities or sins have yet to been forgiven. Hallelujah.
Hallelujah.
So now we have a new verse that we're going to incorporate every Sabbath so that we can remind ourselves how we should conduct during the Shabbat. Ecclesiasticus chapter 11, verse 8. Somebody want to read that?
I got you. Answer not before thou hast heard the cause, neither interrupt men in the midst of their talk.
Hallelujah. Hallelujah. So these are some people look at them as words of wisdom. Some of us look at it as a command. Neither interrupt men in the midst of their talk. So if we could remember that and practice that this Shabbat, it will be greatly appreciated. Hallelujah.
Hallelujah.
Okay, so we have everything set up right now to go. If Brother Dreno's ready to go, we could start this lesson. Give me just a second. Hallelujah. There we go. There we go. So we up on the board and the floor is yours, Brother Dreno.
Hallelujah. Let me pull it up myself. Okay. All right, so this is YAH in our DNA, designer genes of a priestly tribe. So this is basically about it's not, I don't want us to focus too much on the science, even though there's a lot of science involved. It's mainly a lesson about application. You know what I mean? And actually having to apply these things so our DNA works the way it was supposed to work. You know what I mean? All right, so y'all know DNA. Next slide, bro. So this is John 3:12. If I have told you earthly things and ye believe not, how shall ye believe if I tell you heavenly things? Right? So if we don't understand the carnal aspects of this walk, then how could we understand the spiritual? You know, I think a lot of times this verse is very underrated, and it's not really taken as serious as the Mashiach was displaying it to be. You know, I think a lot of times we come in this thing and we just want to skip straight to the spiritual aspect of the scripture without ever trying to understand the physical things about it. So that's what we're going to do today. You know, start on those first stepping stones of the corner. So next slide. First, we're going to start with language, right? Because the Hebrew language, okay, we got some. Okay.
You want to read that for you?
No, you could. Well, I was going to everybody.
Oh, okay, I will.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, so this is the language portion and how the Hebrew language is very important. Actually, each one of these segments is a lesson in itself because the Hebrew language has actually been known to heal. It has been known to have certain frequencies that respond well to the body. But this one, we're going to go with the DNA for this segment today. So you can go ahead on and read.
All right, Ecclesiasticus 1:1.
No, go back to that, bro.
Go back. Ecclesiasticus 1:1. For the same things uttered in Hebrew and translated into another tongue have not the same force in them, and do not, and not only these things, yet the law itself and the prophets and the rest of the books have no small difference when they are spoken in their own language.
Okay, so it says the same thing uttered in Hebrew, translated into another tongue, have not the same force. Letting you know that Hebrew is the ultimate tongue to speak our original teachings in. And there are things, a lot of things in this thing that I don't understand. A lot of things that we may never understand that YAH totally understands. And so he gives these commands inside and out. We might only understand certain aspects of why Hebrew is important, but we will never understand the full reasons why Hebrew is important. And I'm going to prove this right now. So go ahead to the next slide, bro. This is just I want to kind of get off subject for 1 second.
Okay.
From the scriptures, what does that look like to y'all? It happened. I'll give you a hint. It happened. That's DNA. That's definitely DNA right there.
Happened in the garden.
Looks like Jacob's ladder.
Okay, I've heard that a lot. I've seen that taught a lot. I've seen that taught.
Looked like a snake.
That was okay. Now you got a little bit of part of it. So what happened? It was mentioned 3 times in the scriptures. Once by Moses, actually did the action. Then Yahshua brought it back up and reiterated this action.
When he turned his staff into the serpent.
Right. He turned the staff into the serpent. So he got the serpent. When the serpent went wrapped around the staff.
Right.
And he lifted it up in the wilderness to heal Israel. Right. So to me, that is representation of that right there. You see the serpent going around the staff here.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So that to me, that's a whole nother lesson though, but I just wanted to bring that out real quick. Okay. Go to the next slide. All right, so I don't know. Can you you can read it? All right, cool.
Yeah. Only 10% of our DNA is being used for building proteins.
Can you make that a little bigger?
I get it. It is the subject of the DNA that is of interest to Western researchers and is being examined and categorized. The other 90% are considered junk DNA. The Russian researchers, however, convinced that nature was not dumb, joined linguistics and geneticists in a venture to explore those 90% of junk DNA. Their results, findings, and conclusions are simply revolutionary. According to them, our DNA is not only responsible for the construction of our bodies, but also serves as data storage and to communication. The Russian ingenious found that the genetic code, especially in the apparently useless 90%, follows the same something.
Wait, before we go to the next slide, I just want to go back over this. So the Russians did a study. And they grabbed some linguistics, which deals with straight language, and they grabbed some geneticists that deal with genes and DNA to do a study on how language affects the DNA, right? So they say that 10% of the DNA is what scientists usually deal with because those proteins move, they mutate, they do different things. You know, you make stem cell research out of it. They can do different things with that 10% of the DNA. It's a little bit easier for them to work with. But that 90% of the DNA was what they said right here, junk DNA, which they really don't do nothing to them. You know what I mean? But, you know, like it says, like, unless it's dumb, you know, let's y'all make something that is vain, which we know he didn't. Right. So they start dealing with the 90% of the DNA. Go to the next slide. Is that the next one?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's it.
Can you read it?
Can you see it?
Oh, I can't. Yeah, go back.
I got it.
You want to read the last sentence so that it continues?
Okay, the Russian ingenious found the genetic code, especially in the apparent useless 90%, follows the same communication. The Russian linguistics found that the genetic code, especially in the apparent useless 90%, follows the same rules as all our human languages. is all of our human languages. To this end, they compared the rules of syntax, the way in which words are put together to form phrases and sentences. Semiotics, the study of meaning in languages, forms, and the basis rules of the grammar. They found that the outlines of our DNA follows a regular grammar and do have set rules just like our languages. So human languages did not appear coincidentally, yet are a reflection of our inherent DNA.
So what they found with playing around with the 90% of the DNA that they deemed useless, they found that it laid the barriers of language. The same principles that we see in language, we can see in DNA. So they go together. Like we speak in this English language, which is a bastardized language, that is actually affecting our DNA. Right? So go to the next slide.
Okay. The Russian biophysicist and molecular biologist, I can't pronounce it. Gorbachev and his colleagues also explored the verbal behavior of the DNA. The verbal behavior of the DNA. The bottom line was
frequency, vibrational.
What did I say?
Say vibrational.
Okay, I thought it said
they start playing with the frequency.
Okay, vibrational behavior of the DNA. The bottom line was living chromosomes function just like the
solitonic holographic.
Say that again.
Solitonic holographic.
Okay, solitonic. Yeah, because I can see it right there. Solitonic holographic computer using the endogenous DNA laser radiation. This means that they manage, for example, to modulate certain frequencies, patterns onto a laser array, and with it influence the DNA frequency. And thus, the genetic information itself, since the base structure of DNA alkaline pairs and of language, as explained earlier, are of the same structure of DNA, decoding is necessary.
Right.
One can simply use words and sentences of the human language.
Okay, so they use laser radiation to manipulate the frequencies of DNA to basically line it up with the language, right? So they did experiments on this to really line it up with the languages. You know, it wasn't just something that they studied. They actually did the frequencies of language and matched them up to DNA. Wow. Next slide.
DNA laser radiation. This means that they manage, for example, to modulate certain frequency patterns onto a laser array.
My bad. You can go to the second paragraph.
Oh, we have that already? Oh, sorry. One can simply use words and sentences of the human languages. This, too, was experimentally proven. Living DNA substance in living tissue, not in vitro, will always react to language, modulate laser rays, and even to radio waves, if the proper frequency are being used.
Okay, so being disconnected from our heritage, being disconnected from our languages, all of these things not only discontinue us from our heritage and our culture and the things that our ancestors built, but it actually affects our DNA in ways that we can't see. You know, there's a lot of things that go on within our bodies that are affected, but we don't see them, so we don't pay attention. But this is what I'm trying to bring out today.
Are you taking questions after everything's done, or how you
I mean, I don't want to go too far. There's a lot of technical things. I don't want to like have whole conversations. If you got questions, then yeah, I'll answer some questions. You got questions? I'll answer.
So basically, our language that we're speaking is
I got family issues.
No, she's not saying turn it up.
So
you're saying the language that we're speaking is taking us away from our culture.
Right. It's taking us away from our original DNA, you know, because as I'm going to prove in this lesson that DNA markers, like we can actually change that back right now, not only just for ourselves, but for our grandchildren as well, like in generations after us.
So like we almost kind of went over before and saying like just speaking this language, we cursing each other, don't even know it.
But because it's spelling, you know,
Right.
that's what a spell is. It's
Right.
called spelling for a reason. You know what I mean? We're putting spells on each other.
They're writing in
You know
cursive.
what I'm saying? So
Right.
if you look at a lot of the English language, like the word diva means demon. Right. You know, queens could mean prostitute.
I'm a
really.
diva.
A lot of these things and these words in our language definitely or speaking, and this is kind of what we went over in the last lesson on love, that these words mean something, right? These vibrations that we speak actually mean things, you know, and not only does it affect physical and mental things, but it also affects our DNA.
Like how they do it. I put a post on that saying like, look, Beyonce guys, y'all wanted to be diva stuff. And y'all know what diva really means. The witch.
The new terminology they using now is savage.
Yeah,
Chris, Chuck, had been saying that.
Yeah.
This is very insightful.
Next slide. All praise God.
Ooh, pituitary gland.
All right, so the pituitary gland and the pineal gland. Like I know a lot of people might see that and see a lot of either atheists or like the Kemetic community speaks on this a lot. You know, and it kind of turns a lot of Israelites or people that read the Bible off. You know, but here we are. We're going to connect into the scriptures and show that you know we were one of the first people that even dealt with these things. So, so this is the picture of the pineal gland inside the brain, right? So, okay, so this is the pineal gland, and actually, it's in ancient cultures. This actually is the depiction of the owl horse in Egypt as well. So it shows that ancient cultures had knowledge of these things, and not only did they have knowledge, they knew that they meant something. You know what I mean? Because in what I'm about to show here is in the New Age or the white man age, they didn't think this meant anything, right? Can you show it? Can you show it? Show what?
Like how you can see the owl horse in it.
I don't actually have the owl horse. I didn't put the owl horse on because I really didn't want to go into that on the show.
Right. No. Well, if you can recall the shape of the horse.
Yeah,
usually
I want to bring that up because you know they deal with a lot of spells themselves.
I ain't gonna put up there and say show it.
They also consider that the third eye.
Right. Well, I'm gonna show that too, though.
It is in scripture.
All right, so what something else that this looks like, right? It also looks like a staff, like Aaron's staff, right? And when you deal with biology, you know, you'll see that there's two halves of the brain.
Yeah.
There's two halves of the brain, and there's 6 cranial nerves on each side of the brain. A lot of things that deal with the creation of the world have to do with Israel. So the 12 constellations were the 12 tribes. You know what I mean? Representation of that. You know, you got the sun. You know, everybody says. So everybody say like, oh, the sun is the sun that the Bible speaks of.
Yeah.
S-U-N? No, S-U-N is the sun that the Bible speaks of, but the sun was based on the Mashiach. You know what I mean? Just like the constellations, they got it backwards. You know what I'm saying? Like these things were just things to come. When the Messiah was born, the wise men looked at the stars and was able to find the Mashiach. It wasn't that the Mashiach was born for the stars, but the stars were aligned for the Mashiach. So you gotta get that order incorrect. You gotta get that correct. It's not that the sun was based on the Mashiach. It's the Mashiach, you know, was based on the sun. Right. So we got this looks like Aaron's staff, and we can get this is a whole nother lesson because this actually represents y'all mindedness. It represents the Ark of the Covenant. You know, you had what was in the Ark of the Covenant. You had the tablets and the law. So you know, the brain is split into 2 parts, and also you know, there's 12 cranial nerves in the brain, and 6 on each side. And to make it even more interesting, there's one big, the biggest cranial nerve is the trigeminal, which breaks into 3 parts, kind of like how the tribe of Manasseh broke in half and became 2 different parts, right? And Ephraim got integrated into the 12 tribes. Like I was just kind of thinking it.
Bro, yeah.
So next slide. All right, so this is the pineal gland. I'm not going to go all the way into this. I'm just going to skim over this real quick. This is the definition of the pineal gland. It's a small endocrine gland in the brain of most vertebrates, right? And I'm going to go down the route of serotonin. We see that serotonin again that we went over in the love lesson. But it modulates sleep patterns, both circadian and seasonal cycles, right? That's very important to this lesson, right? So I'm gonna read that again. Which the pineal gland modulates sleep patterns and circadian rhythms or circadian and seasonal cycles, right? Mm-hmm. Next slide. Another thing too, though, when you I'll say that in a minute because I'm gonna bring it up in a couple of slides.
It's the same. Next slide. Next slide.
Okay, so this well, go back one.
Go back.
Somebody went way up there.
I'm sorry. This PowerPoint is responding slow. I apologize. Give me a second. Come on now.
All right.
There we go.
So this was taken from this was actually taken from a government website, right? A government medical website. And there's a lot of things in this government website that weren't mentioned that are facts. And there's reasons for this, right? We was talking about a little bit about this last night in Zoom, but you know, the government, see, they know all these sciences, right? They're not stupid. They got people, the smartest people in the world, to study these things and to study how they affect the human body. They know how all these things affect the spirituality and the connections to the Most High. They have all this knowledge. So, but there was a time where they didn't. In the 1960s, before the 1960s, they knew there was a pineal gland since the 1500s, but they didn't know the purpose of it. They lost that ancient knowledge, and they didn't know the purpose of the pineal gland, which they still don't all the way know. But what happened in the 60s where there was a Vietnam War, and all the Vietnam vets that died, when they come back, they had mandatory autopsies. So they studied these people, and what they found was the black vets that came back had bigger pineal glands. So which caused them to start to study it. Like, well, wait a minute. Because if you Google it right now, pineal gland, Google will tell you that it's a pea-shaped gland. Mm-hmm. But in the black patients, they were more like the tip of the thumb than the size of the pea. You know what I'm saying? They were a lot bigger. So that began to them to study this, like, well, wait, why is these people have bigger pineal glands than white people? Like, what's going on here? And they knew it was important too because they're seeing that the pineal gland gets a lot more blood flow to it. I think the only thing that gets more blood flow to it is the kidneys. And we know how important the kidneys are. So there's nothing that's going to be receiving that much blood flow without it being important in your body, right? So, okay, so this is a post-mortem histopathological study, right? That's just basically a fancy word for autopsy. Was an autopsy study was done in 233 pineal gland patients. Among them, 70% showed microscopic evidence of calcification in the pineal gland parenchyma. The frequency of calcification increased with age. However, the severity of calcification reached the peak in the 60 to 69-year-old group, then gradually declined. As compared to males, females had slightly higher frequency and reached the peak of severity in a younger age group. So, when we talk about female prophetesses and female visions and things like that, they should be taken extremely more serious. So it says here that they did 233 studies on Black patients. Now, if you go to the government website, you'll see that these were called mandatory autopsies. Where are you going to get 233 mandatory autopsies from? Come on. You know what I'm saying? When is there, first of all, 233 people that died at the same time? Right. And then how are all their autopsies mandatory? Right. That lets you know that this is talking about the Vietnam War. When they came over, they had to get mandatory autopsies. Right. But they're not really going to tell you that. You have to really dig. They're trying to hide it because they know that they have to keep our pineal glands calcified, so we don't have this higher power that that they're trying to keep oppressed. Right. Mm-hmm. Next slide. All right, so we just read that the pineal gland is in charge of circadian rhythms. Mm-hmm. Now, this has to be noted because this is important in what we're talking about here. This is the list, the map of circadian rhythms, right? Pay attention to the south, what's that, eastern part, right? Where it says melatonin secretion stops. And it stops right at the point of sunrise because that's what the pineal gland does. It secretes and activates more at night. Mm-hmm. That's why, the doctors will prescribe children or people melatonin. Yeah. Pineal gland actually secretes the melatonin. That's what the maker of serotonin is coming out of the pineal gland. So, and at night, this is when the pineal gland activates and it secretes this fluid that comes out. And that is melatonin, right? And that process actually stops when the sun comes out. Because what it does is, what they're finding about the pineal gland is that it reacts to not only magnetism, but it reacts to sunlight. Mm-hmm. The pineal gland reacts to sunlight. So when the sun goes up, this is when it stops its secretion and kind of goes on a downtime until the nighttime comes again. You guys, excuse me, I got asthma. I forgot my inhaler. It ain't corona, don't worry. But so the circadian rhythm of the pineal gland is a 24-hour period, and you see that all the function it has in the day, but the most important time is at night, and when the sun comes up, it stops. Right. Next slide. You good those? I'm good. Don't worry about it. I'm good. Do my best work tonight. So a circadian rhythm is a natural internal process that regulates the sleep cycle and repeats roughly every 23 hours. It says roughly because some people is 23 and a half, and they have different there's people with certain genomes that's in their DNA that have less than a 24-hour cycle in the circadian rhythm, but actually leads to some diseases and certain off balances in their immune systems and different things like that, right? Yeah, they're knocked off. I don't know about if that's one of them, but it definitely there's some complications that they be having, and they show that it's hereditary when they dealt with it. They found out because a lady would wake up at odd hours and her sleep was off, and she realized not only did her daughter do it, but her granddaughter did it as well. So she went to a doctor and they started to study, and that's what led to this research. All right, so it can refer to any biological process that displays endogenous entrainable oscillation of about a 24-hour period. So circadian rhythms is a 24-hour period, which also shows that there's 24 hours in a day, just like the scriptures say. Right. Next slide. All right, so we're going to get into the scriptural aspect of this thing. You want to read it all day?
Yes, sir.
All right.
And Jacob was left alone. And there wrestled a man with him until the breaking of day. And when he saw that he prevailed not against him, he touched the hollow of his thigh. And the hollow of Jacob's thigh was out of joint as he wrestled with him. And he said, let me go, for the day breaketh. And he said, I will not let thee go, except thou bless me.
Next slide.
And he said unto him, what is thy name? And he said, Jacob. And he said, thy name shall be called no more Jacob, but Israel. For as a prince has thou power with YAH and with men, and has prevailed.
Hallelujah.
And Jacob asked him and said, tell me, I pray thee, thy name. And he said, what for? Is it thou that dost ask after my name? And he blessed him there.
Next slide.
And Jacob called the name of the place Peniel. In a land, for I have seen YAH face to face, and my life is preserved. Therefore, the children of Israel eat not of the swine which shrank. Sinew, sorry, I'm thinking pork. Sinew which shrank, which is upon the hollow of the thigh unto this day, because he touched the hollow of Jacob's thigh in the sinew that shrank.
Okay, so go back to the first slide of the scriptures, bro. 2 slides ago. It's
back up 2 slides.
Back up to the beginning of it. Yes, we'll start at verse 24.
Yeah, 24 hours.
All right, so here we see that he wrestled with the angel, right? And I forgot to put it in there, but right before this, it shows that it was nighttime. Then it says that he wrestled with the man
all night
until the daybreak.
All night.
Right? So all night he wrestled, and right what he says, let me go, for the day breaketh. Like the day is coming.
The day is coming.
We have to end this. The day is almost over, right? Go to the next slide.
I'm about to lose my strength.
Right.
You got these putting stars together.
So okay, so then it says this is when he was okay, let me see the name. He wanted to know his name. Go to the next slide. All right, and then it says that he was named Israel in that last one, which we know that's significant for the spiritual awakening or the new man that Jacob became. You know, that's when he received that name Israel. You know, he was changed, just like when Abram became Abraham. You know, when he crossed over. You know what I'm saying? He was made a new man, right? So it says here that he named the land Peniel. Because he had seen the face of YAH, right? And to connect that, like you said, they stopped right when the day break, right when those circadian rhythms stopped the secretion of melatonin, right? So here we go. It says, and the children of Israel did not eat of the sinew. That's an unrelated subject because, you know, like I try not to eat like the muscle or the thigh meat. If I'm eating chicken, I try not to eat the thigh, the veins in the thigh. You know what I mean?
What, from the chicken thighs?
From this, yeah, right. That's my personal understanding. That, you know, when you eat and this is just traditional. This has never been really law.
Yeah, no,
this is a memorial part that actually represents when Jacob crossed over and became Israel, thus giving us our power to the world. Like it said, that he became the prince of power for YAH and of man. Right. So that's when Israel had been ordained on for the nation as a priestly tribe, right? So his DNA was activated because there's things in our DNA that are dormant and there's things that become activated, and that's what happened here, right? That's what it sounds like. Next slide. So we see the
ask a question. A request.
No doubt.
Brother, could you speak on the fact that Jacob called the place Peniel? Right. That's powerful. I've read that plenty of times and never connected that to the pineal gland.
Right.
Right. I just thought that was very, when you was talking to me about this, I thought that was very interesting, and I just wanted to, for you to focus that with the family, let them know about that opinion, though. Did anybody notice that?
Yeah, that shows that they know.
Right.
That these people, these elite, whoever doing all these studies, they know everything. They know about it. They just gonna let us know.
Yeah, they trying to study. They trying to figure it out.
They actually suppress us.
They know all the carnal things. They're trying to figure out the spiritual thing. We trying to figure out both right now.
They try to attacking us carnally through our two
carnal. Yeah.
Right.
They taught us that at the program called Pinal.
Really?
Yeah, they taught us that. They said we call it Pinal, like when you meditate and pray,
right?
Especially in the nighttime, right? That you get more in tune. The best time to pray to YAH is at nighttime, right before the break of day.
Right.
That's when everything's quiet, you settle, you meditate and pray. That's why they call it Pinal, because the Pinal gives you, the pineal gland gives you more power.
Right.
To do that, it opens up doors, and everybody can't do that.
Right. Yeah. And that's why Black people have bigger pineal glands. Right. They're able to tap in a little bit more.
I guess that's the reason why they say like even the evil spirits. I guess the spirit is more spiritual around that time. I guess because they said had demonic spirits like to work around that time.
Right.
Can I say something real quick? I'm gonna keep it really short. But I remember we were talking about, why some people wake up around like 4 a.m., 3 to 4 a.m.
Right.
And, it was in the Bible and we couldn't find exactly when those doors basically open. But now we're seeing we're actually bringing in those connections. That's when our pineal, that our pineal glands are activated. He just said it's all about the sleep frequency, those patterns they start to change, and that door starts to open. So we kind of got our answer right now. Yeah, we did, right?
It's like a high time for spiritual. I mean, spiritual could be any time, but it's like it's a high time for it.
It's crazy to me because I wake up around that time and force myself back to sleep. You know what I mean? And my whole, I'm not going into it, but I'm wondering if maybe that's someone saying, hey,
maybe pray.
You need to be focusing right now. If you just
if you wake up and just pray, and then go back to sleep.
That's all my mom does, and she's not even in this walk, quote unquote, but she has a huge connection, she's always up around 3-4 praying. She says she feels like it's him telling her it's time to pray.
Right, because honestly, that's right. Like especially right now, like you were saying the other day, and I was like, "Oh, you up?" And he was like, "Yeah, because these birds ain't." That's right around the time when you start hearing the birds.
Right.
That's one of the things that wakes me up is hearing those birds, and I'm thinking, oh, I don't overslept. And here it is. It's a sign saying, hey,
it's y'all's alarm clock. Birds chirping like, get up, y'all, pray, get up. Because actually animals have the circadian rhythms as well. Of course. That's why like a rooster can roost where it does, you know what I mean? Like certain animals do things at certain times, they have a circadian. Is he not in everything? Y'all's in everything.
I was just thinking about that when you listen and you hear the birds chirping, it's like they're praising YAH even before the sun comes up. It's still dark when the birds are chirping. There's not a break of light out and they're singing the YAH already, thanking him for what's about to happen.
What's the song I want to incorporate? After all this song, I love the songs. This one lady talks about how everything else is praising y'all. The sun, the moon, the birds, the water, the tide. Everything is praising him. Everything serves him. Everything.
Commandment. Everything is commanded. So let's just do a quick recap on that real quick. Jacob wrestled with this deity or with this angel or whatever you really want to say it was. You know what I mean? Because there is some complications on what it is, but he definitely wrestled with his inner self, if not nothing else here. You know what I mean? We got to really recognize that aspect of it. He wrestled with his self here, and the interesting part about it was too that he was his bone was popped out. And it says that, after all this was over, it says he had a limp, or it was lame. You know what I mean? So this shows that there was a struggle here of pain. You know what I mean? You ever tried to wrestle? Imagine being wrestling with your leg popped out. So there was pain involved. This is significant to a pain. Like I always say, there's no circumcision without pain, right? You can't change your life without pain. Application is all about pain. It's about dragging yourself to this level. You know, going through defeat in the flesh is painful because your body wants it. To get rid of an addiction is pain. You ever seen a dope head that can't get no dope? That looks painful. You know what I mean? But it is something that you have to go through to reach the other side, the higher level, the higher self, right? It's pain, right?
Also, can I say, I'm sorry, acknowledging your sin.
Right.
You know, cutting your own head off. Like you said, that's pain too. Like once you acknowledge that I'm a filthy sinner, I'm a filthy rag, and I got to change.
Right.
Because that's something we have to do before we can cross over as well.
Definitely.
May I say something?
Yep.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Also, I've noticed like caretaking of different family members within my family. Mainly my one cousin, Donna, and my mother. And I asked the doctor one time, why did this happen and what did they call it? Like at night would be, especially if they was on their deathbed and didn't have long to be here on earth. But it seemed like from the hours of like say 1, 2 in the morning would be their worst. They would struggle all night. They were very difficult. They were seeing things, talking to things in the room that I couldn't see, but they could see. Or she would call me my grandma's name. And they went through this horrible time all the way up until about 4 o'clock or so in the morning. Then right before the sun come up, then they would mellow out. And they would sleep and they would rest all day. And they said it was called sunrise. So even this thing that we're talking about right now has a lot to do when you're transitioning from life over to death. When he's taking you from this world to wherever he takes you after he puts us terminally, put us all the way to sleep. And it's kind of scary. I've seen it with many family members, and they have such a hard time, especially when there are some people who really don't want to leave this earth. Right. So they fight up against that. And it's normally during those same hours. And then like right before the sun comes up, it breaks, they get metal, and everything's okay with them. So it's deeper than what we think.
Right. Absolutely. All right, so this is the definition of Peniel in the Hebrew. It's kind of tough to read it.
I got you. Peniel, or more properly, Pentel, from the Hebrew word H6437 and H410. Face of YAH, Peniel, a place east of Jordan. Also, Peniel, the name of 2 Israelites, Peniel and Peniel. KJV translation, count 9 times. The KJV translates Strong's H6439 in the following manner: Peniel, P-E-N-U-E-L 8 times, and Peniel, P-E-N-I-E-L 1 time. The hidden outline of the biblical usage: Peniel equals facing YAH. A Benjamite, son of Shashak, brother of Iphidiah of the family of Saul, son of Hor, father of Gedor, and a descendant of Judah. The place named by Yaakov when he wrestled with YAH and located on the north bank of the Jabbok, close to the Jordan.
All right. So yeah, for that, brother. So This is facing YAH, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that is extremely important when we're talking about change and application. You know, this is a wrestling that we all go through. If you think you just going to turn from your ways and serve, you ain't even human. You know what I'm saying? This is a fight. There's pain involved in facing YAH. You know, to elevate this pineal gland is a struggle and a wrestling and a fighting. You know, when we're facing the Creator. Next slide.
All right, so then Jacob said unto his household and to all that were with him, put away the strange gods that are among you, and be clean, and change your garments, and let us arise and go up to Bethel, and I will make there an altar unto unto Elohim, who answered me in the day of my distress, and was with me in the way which I went.
All right, so in between this time, he met up with Esau, if you read the story. That's really why he was even shook that night that he wrestled with the angel, because he was worried about being killed by Esau.
Right.
Yeah. So in between this time that we just read from the first to this one, he met Esau. You know, the Most High had answered his prayers. Esau wasn't even worried about killing him. Mm-hmm. They embraced and hugged and went together, right? Right. So this is after that, but it's all in unison in the same time period, where you see Jacob had told his whole house, he cleaned his household. You know what I mean? The first thing he did after the whole ordeal and he was blessed, he cleaned his household. He told everybody to put away the strange gods. Because if you know the whole story also, you know that Rebecca grabbed her father's idols, and that was the last thing she did before she rode, and Laban was mad because she grabbed, you know, his idols. So they were dealing with strange Elohim, strange gods, right? So the first thing he did when he wrestled and seen the face and became Israel was clean his own house. Told them to put away these strange gods and clean your garments. Get some fresh clothes. Get up out of them dirty rags. We're new people now. Mm-hmm. Next slide. Wow.
And they gave unto Jacob all the strange gods which were in their hand, and all their earrings which were in their ears. Mm-hmm. And Jacob hid them under the oak which was by Shechem. And they journeyed, and the cherub Elohim was upon the cities that were round about them. And they did not pursue after the sons of Jacob. So Jacob came to Luz, which is in the land of Canaan, that is Bethel, he and all the people that were with him.
All right, so the Most High brought terror among the people, so the people would not even bother Jacob, and he can get out of here safely. And once again, we see that that Israel got those strange gods and took them out of their hands and their earrings. Now, this ain't saying that earrings is evil, but if you study the archaeology of those people in Canaan, they made gods out of everything. They had necklaces and earrings with the gods and the earrings and things like that. So he was like, get rid of all of that sickness, that evil things, and get rid of it.
And they were not doing that no more.
Making
idols out of them, like
right.
them down.
But what's important too is it shows that he was tolerating that before all that. Right. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. It was tolerable. Like, you know, it wasn't even, you know, a thing. Like, everybody did this. You know, everybody in this circle. These deities were in his household. It made it clear that he cleaned his house first. You know what I'm saying? And this is what we all need to do, especially when we be talking about other people. You have to make sure your own house is clean before you can clean somebody else's residence.
That is true.
So, next slide.
Isn't that equivalent to take the plank out your eye?
Right. Right.
Exactly.
Brother Dreno, can I speak on something?
No doubt.
I just want to point out that Bethel, that's the house of El or Elohim. Bethel, house of God. So he had them put away all those false gods and everything else before he went into this land called Luz, which was renamed to House of God or Bethel.
Right. No doubt.
Thank you for shedding light on that, Big Light.
No doubt.
Next slide.
Next slide up. And he built there an altar and called the place El Bethel, because there Elohim appeared unto him when he fled from the face of his brother. But Deborah, Rebekah's nurse, died, and she was buried beneath Bethel under an oak, and the name of it was called Elon, Akuth. And Elohim appeared unto Jacob again when he came out of Padan Aram, and blessed him.
Next slide.
And Elohim said unto him, Thy name is Jacob. Thy name shall not be called any more Jacob, but Israel shall be thy name. And he called his name Israel.
Okay, so we see here the whole process. We seen from the first time when he wrestled with YAH and became the new man, of the things that went through, and it showed. It's funny because this is a whole process of a man that renewed himself. And the first thing that they really reiterated was the fact that how important the pineal gland was to spiritual awakening. Like that was in the details, if you really look. That was one of the first things that had to happen, was an enlightenment that involved the pineal gland. You know what I mean? Then came the action, actually. Then came the get rid of the gods and all of that. You know what I'm saying?
Now you know.
So, right.
We have the business.
Right.
This is a powerful lesson, brother.
Yes, indeed.
All praises go up. So, so we see him getting named Israel, and this is a representation of being a new man or being born again, the first Israelite to be born again. You know, besides, of course, Abraham was, but Abraham had a lot of zeal before that, refusing his father's idols, and left the house totally because of those idols.
Right.
We see he kind of Jacob kind of dealt with these idols for a while. And was okay. Right, was at least okay. He was tolerable about it until that time where he wrestled with the Most High at night and became more spiritual awakened and got rid of it and cleaned his house and became Israel. Hallelujah.
Don't forget, you know, didn't he take an axe? We talked about, oh no, we took this son.
About Abraham. When he did that to his
dad. When he was destroying his
when he was destroying his daddy's idol.
Yeah.
Told his daddy that the big one did it.
Yeah.
The big one did that. It's like, you know, dad, oh, you ain't do that. Right, so why is we playing with that? Now, dad.
I just can't do nothing. Next slide, Aki.
Romans 12:2. And be not conformed to this world, but be ye transformed by the renewing of your mind, that ye may prove what is that good and acceptable and perfect will of Elohim.
Right. So it says, and be not conformed to this world. Don't be so comfortable in this world that you can't transform up out of it. Now that word transform is a root word in the Greek for metamorphosis. To change, to become something totally different. Right. So you're not even recognizable to those who are conformed in the world.
Can I piggyback? Sorry. Can I land back real quick?
Now, why does it like I did?
You bring that word. I think you got to
I said hit. I caught myself. Don't stone me, y'all. It's the Shabbat. But anyway, to move on further for the time aspect, I always like to use that, Dreno. I'm glad you brought that out. The metaphorical change, like a caterpillar. You know, I said we all like those caterpillars, struggling through life, inch by inch, to get from the sidewalk to the middle of the street to the other side. Man, that's daggone near a lifelong journey to them. Oh, yeah. But when he get depressed, ready to give up on life, he goes into a cocoon state, not recognizing who he really is until there's micro silkworms going up and down inside the cocoon, building his wings. He recognizes himself. He have a Ruach awakening, find out who he is and enjoys it, and breaks out of the cocoon, transformed into a beautiful butterfly, able to soar above all restraints of the past. That's how we are today. Not to say we're going to be perfect, but we're not going to be walking in the way we used to do. what we should have done. So that's the metaphorical of being ye transformed by the renewing of your mind as well.
Hallelujah. That's the way to put that dot in there. Yeah. Right. That's that T. All right, next slide. All right, so this is a calcified pineal gland, right? That's what it looks like, when your pineal gland is calcified.
Which one, the A or B?
They're both.
Okay.
They're both.
Black
One is
people.
just bigger than the other.
One looks like one's for white people, one's for black people.
Definitely. No, I think it's a little even smaller than that. But for white people. But wow. So they're both calcified here. And I gave this analogy to the fellas last night. I briefly touched on this with them for a hot second. It's like, a mechanic, like how women take their cars to a mechanic. Like a lot of times mechanics will take advantage of them, right? Tell you that, oh man, your oscillation machine is broke, man, on your brakes. Yeah. It's $1,000.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Right. And a lot of women that don't know no better will be like, all right, I'll pay it. I just want my car back. Mm-hmm. The scientists, this government system do the same thing with us because we don't understand science.
Right.
We're ignorant to science, so they can tell us and feed us whatever we want, and we have to suck it up and buy it.
Right.
You know what I mean? So this is why this is so important for our education, to educate ourselves on these things before they take advantage of us. Because, like he said, we're behind enemy lines here.
That's
You know what I mean? We are under attack.
Right.
Our children are under attack. Or women are under attack. The men are under attack. Mm-hmm. So, I was reading Art of War the other day, and you have to know your enemy. Yes. You have to know your enemy in order to defeat them.
Right.
And it also says that the defeat your enemy is unto his own devices. Right. The defeat of an enemy is of their own follies. Mm-hmm. Right? So we're being defeated on our own follies, on our own ignorance. Mm-hmm. It's very easy to defeat the people that are ignorant to the things that are destroying them.
Right.
So a calcified pineal gland definitely disconnects us with a higher learning, a higher understanding of YAH.
Disconnects.
Next slide.
How does your pineal gland become calcified?
Next slide.
Programming.
No doubt. So
he ain't gonna leave you hanging, sis.
The calcified, to decalcify your pineal gland, which would mean that these things are the things that calcify your pineal gland, right here, right? So use fluoride filters to minimize fluoride intake from public water. Wow. So tap water is filled with fluoride.
Yes.
It's filled with fluoride for no damn reason. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, it's for a reason.
So right, to disconnect us.
Right.
What better way to disconnect the people than to put it in something that you're going to use every day?
Right.
So
water was so good.
Right. Thing run a little bit.
Right. So actually, Hitler used fluoride to docile the so-called Jewish people when he had them enslaved. He actually used fluoride to turn them into sheep. Right. So next thing on the list is use alternative fluoride-free toothpaste.
Yes.
Right. So I use my product is Tom's. I use Tom's. It's a little bit shaky. You still got to read the back of Tom's because Tom's used to be all the way A1, but Colgate bought them out. Colgate bought Tom's out. So there are some Tom's products that have fluoride. You got to really watch. But it's a real good product that I consistently use. Except for around Passover, I threw it away because it had baking soda in it. So I got a charcoal activated toothpaste.
Hello.
And then and what'd you say?
Hello.
Hello. There's another Hello. Okay. So Hello toothpaste. Good with no fluorides because these things will calcify the pineal gland, right? Because the thing about it is, it's like this. It's another thing I said last night. You can smoke all you want. You can smoke and your lungs will just turn black. You can eat fried chicken and your heart and arteries will clog. You have a heart attack. You know what I'm saying? You could drink and your liver will be destroyed. There's no protection for none of those things once they're being attacked. But the pineal gland actually protects itself with this calcification. That's not something that's happening because it's destroying it. That thing is trying to protect itself.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? That's what the calcification comes from.
It's like a force field.
Right. It's a forceful, like, yo, something in here ain't right. We gotta protect this important organ of our body. It has to be protected. Our lungs don't even get protected like that. Our heart doesn't get protected like that. Go ahead.
Question. Did somebody just compare it to a foreskin?
Force field.
All right, but listen to what I'm saying. A foreskin, right? Now imagine when that foreskin's cut off or that pineal gland is decalcified.
Right.
Man, that's powerful. Go on, bro.
I got a question.
Yep. Yes, sir.
So you think that as far as the fluoride, them putting fluoride and everything, you think that had a part of the awakening? If your pineal gland is damaged, can it affect the awakening of the brothers and sisters?
I think everything can affect the awakening, even the pork they put in everything for the same reasons.
Right.
You know, but I don't think nothing can stop the awakening. Not even if our pineal glands can be taken out, and we will still wake up because it's the Father's will was written by the prophets to happen. So there's nothing they can do to stop it. They can try to put, they can slow it, they can stop, they can kill some of us off, they could, you know, turn one man against man, woman against woman, but it's still not going to stop it as a whole. I don't think it just won't happen.
Now, does it have something to do with how they say, you know, circumcise your heart? That has something to do with it too?
I mean,
that's exactly what I'm talking about right there, you know?
Exactly. I always say circumcision is way deeper than the heart.
Yeah.
And Jeremiah tells you to circumcise what? Your eyes. You know what I'm saying? So
I'm talking about the pituitary gland.
With the pineal?
Well, circumcision means to cut away.
I know
what's not needed.
So is that to cut away the calcium built up?
Right.
Too? That's what I'm saying.
No doubt.
You figure if it's no longer necessary, it's going to open back up.
Right.
So maybe what Yasharon was saying is we got people who can't wake up right now.
Strong delusion.
Because they're so far off and away from being in alignment with Yah that it's completely covered.
Right. I mean, but this is one of the reasons.
I was saying it wouldn't stop the awakening, but it was a plot to try to prevent the awakening.
Right. It definitely
to prolong it.
Yeah. Well, you consider what's going on today and in the past, because we have those chemicals they've been giving us, along with predictive programming. Because you see who they're attacking, the children.
Right.
Look at the children's commercials, cartoons, all that stuff got the demonic stuff in it. So they try to capture attention. Even when I was growing up, guess who was superheroes? White people.
Right.
Shazam, Superman, Tarzan in the jungle full of black people beating everybody up. Yeah, come on, man. So that's predictive programming. That we doubt ourselves, hate ourselves, and belittle ourselves and kill each other. That takes us all away from the will of Yah until there is an awakening. But you have to understand, Yeshua did say, "My sheep hear my voice." Scriptures does says all are called, but only a few are chosen. And y'all said he make vessels of honor and vessels of dishonor. So we got to understand, everybody's not going to wake up.
Right.
You know?
Yeah, but these are definitely vices. That's what I was saying when I said what he said, we're behind enemy lines. These things are attacks on our people. So these things are definitely done purposely to slow up this connection to the Most High. No doubt about it. They know about all of these sciences better than I know about them. So, they actually use this to weaponize our people and against our people. So 3, it says, stop taking calcium supplements with synthetic calcium, right? Avoid using non-stick cookware with PFOA and PFC, right? So like basically cheap pots. I'm in the process of changing my pots because I think I got some non-stick pots myself in my.
They're not non-stick. They're stainless steel.
Stainless steel is good.
They're stainless steel.
Cast iron. I like the old-fashioned cast iron.
I know all about
cast iron is good too.
Season them up and everything.
Party, you all be gonna get rid of all your pots and pans.
You better take this altar home today.
Yeah, I just bought a non-stick big one too. I gotta throw that away.
I mean, these things will affect us. You know, you see the things that have in common here, or things that are everyday uses.
Yep,
Right.
yep.
It
seems like it's good for us. It's really bad.
Could that be why I heard somebody saying that we shouldn't use aluminum foil to heat our food up?
Yeah, I've seen that type, like aluminum foil, how it
How you might cover it over your pan or something. You put your food in the oven and heat it up.
how you leave it in your refrigerator on that.
Don't make poison
for you. I seen somebody do that on that.
But it also blocks radiation.
Oh yeah.
That's only when you wear it on top of your head.
And stand on the roof, right?
I wanted to mention, because Dreno talked about the non-stick, that he felt, they were one of the first people to come out with the non-stick pans. And I want to say probably like almost 10 years afterwards, they had to come out and say that their product can cause cancer. Because of the non-stick. That's why the one thing you're not supposed to use metal in it to scrape that non-stick stuff up, because then it gets in your food.
Mm-hmm. That's why I use wood stuff.
Yeah, plastic. Yes, it's
So ready for the next slide?
No, not yet. 5 is eat organic, whole foods.
I
mean, not like, but they say whole foods. They mean like like leafy green, raw vegan, not processed foods.
Anything that's
Genesis 129.
Right, it's cauliflower
diet. Genesis 129 diet. That's our backyard.
The stuff in the backyard. Your dandelion, your purple flowers, your burdock root.
So 6, avoid processed foods and foods sprayed with pesticides.
They always do that.
So this is basically everything that is in your everyday life. Everyday life. So you're attacked every day by invisible enemies that the enemy knows about, killing you with. Their biggest weapons are invisible.
Silent weapons?
Silent weapons. That's their biggest weapons against us. And they, like Yahshua said, it definitely is an attack, and it definitely affects us. Right. It's definitely affecting the awakening of doubt.
We control everything. We don't know what vegetable is sprayed with pesticide when you get it.
Don't. That's why the Torah tells us to actually farm ourselves and teaches the agriculture.
Right.
And do these things ourselves. It really don't. It's the Torah's not based on John Egan.
Right.
It's just that.
So you ready?
Before I learned about the strong delusional issue, I couldn't wrap my head around why a fellow black Christian and my friend could not accept that we was Israelites, and that's something to be proud of. Let's face it, that's something to be proud of. You being knowing that you are one of y'all's chosen above everything else. That's something to be proud of. But me, he tell me, no, we're not. No, we're not. No, we're not. And I'm like, man, what is wrong with you, man? But maybe when I found out about that strong delusion, I said, maybe it's one of them. Maybe it's one of them.
That's something really. I'm sorry, brother.
It's sad, though. It's sad, but it's real.
Trying to stand on something, but that's what we really should be trying to really, really push to do. One of us, somebody, try to get a garden started, man. That's
I
don't even know why we're talking about it. We're gonna make it happen.
We're gonna make it happen.
Right. I'm just saying because we was talking about it.
And the pesticides,
Next slide, bro.
Yeah, not white residue.
All right, so this is DNA, man. How food actually affects your DNA. Right. Mm-hmm. So it's like this, right? If 10 years ago I ate and did certain things, right? And it's 10 years later I changed the way I eat. I couldn't go commit a crime after they had my DNA for 10 years and change my DNA to the point where it's not recognizable for the crime I did. It's more like having a car, a Cadillac,
and changing the rims, changing the leather seats, you know, is a fully loaded Caddy now. It's still a Cadillac, right? The Cadillac didn't change, the model didn't change, just they call them DNA expressions, right? So but the expressions are things that activate. DNA that activates and is no longer dormant, right? So next slide. This has to do with something called epigenetics. The study of epigenetics is the study of changes in organisms caused by modification of genes or gene expression rather than alteration of the genetic code itself. Epigenetics has transformed the way we think about genomes. So this is just basically saying what I just said. You know, it says things that are environment. How they say we're a product of our environment. Mm-hmm. Everything about epigenetics tells us that our environment changes our DNA. You know, the things we say change your DNA. The things you eat change your DNA. And the reason why I'm focusing on food with this one was because a lot of the studies on epigenetics are due to food or their own food.
Wow. Yeah, no, I agree with you because on hey, look at all the stuff that's going on with the chicken sandwich. People going crazy, eating this. Like it's the foods that we eat. It changes us.
Harming each other.
It does change us.
The Franken chicken. But you know what stood out to me when you said that about our environment does that to us? When Richard Pryor was dropping knowledge in that little video, when he said he took a trip to Africa back in the days. And he said everybody was pleasant, they was eating right, you know, they treated them nice. My brother, he's back at the hotel, and he asked God, he was like, it's so different down here. He said, I noticed something. I did not say the word nigga since I've been here. I ain't called not one person nigga, no one called me nigga. He said, the boy said, that's because there are none. You know? And he said, that's what hit me. He said, and a light went off in my head, and that caused me to change. He said, when I got back home, he said, I made a solemn oath to never call another brother a nigga again. So you're right, DNA can change you.
Right.
I mean, environment can change that.
When you think about it, when you look at the food that we got, even at Janet, like I remember when I first started working on my job, chick was eating a salad and she had snow peas. I'm like, what is that? She's like, snow peas. I'm like, where you get them from? It was like Janet, well, not another Janet. I never seen that thing. It was amazing. You know what I mean? But what they did is they fed us what they wanted us to be fed. Even though we were quote unquote free, right? They still funneled garbage into our community for our intake. You know what I mean? Just like now, like I could go to the Giant Eagle down on the south side. Y'all now was going to Penn State. We were stopping at the Giant Eagle before we went up there. It had totally different setup. Like as far as the foods that they had, the way that the store was set up. Their bathroom was clean. I ain't seen a clean Giant Eagle
like towards where she was
everywhere
at?
in the city.
Yeah.
The one in Bellevue.
Yeah.
Oh man, one in Bellevue.
It just goes to show that, you know what I mean? Just like I was saying as a joke, the project water bathroom water, like these are the types of things that they've been doing to us because they know what the plan to do. So if we can calcify it to where you don't wake up, like you said, they're not stopping the prophecy, but they did their damnedest best to try to slow this thing down.
Yeah. Right. And drop as many of us on the wayside.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And Dreno, you talk about calcifying, like what they're doing to the food is you gotta calcify, because if I go to the store and I get a beef Slim Jim but you got pork in it, then I gotta straight jump to organic food because it reads pork, but beef, but there's pork in it.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? They're found all the food. So even when you try to eat healthy, it's not what you're not getting what you're buying anyway. You know what I'm saying? So when you jump straight to the organic food, you're eliminating all that. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Whole, like.
Yeah, whole food.
And they have all these different names. That's what I was showing. It's all these different names for pork. So they can slide it in there on
big
you.
words and
So
stuff.
if you don't look it up, you don't know what you're eating.
Gelatin, go. Right. When I start reading those big words I can't pronounce, I put it down. If it don't say 100% this, I'm good.
Or if it has too many ingredients.
Right. Yeah. Right.
That's like if I go get peanut butter, all I want to see is peanuts and salt.
Yeah, peanuts. That's what belongs in there.
Yeah, I don't want to see no extra. Yeah.
Then when I was reading ingredients, I was reading ingredients to these Salisbury steaks when I found out they was beef, but they had percentage of pork in it with other stuff. And as I was reading, I couldn't pronounce it. And it reminded me of reading one of them lost books in the Bible when we try to pronounce some people's names. I was like, oh man, that's what it reminded me of. The Salama Polio and Shibiu. You know, I'd be like, I don't need this. I see why they got rid of those books though, because they couldn't translate those names. They just said, man, let's get rid of them.
All right, so
ready for the next slide?
Yeah. All right, so epigenetics refers to changes in the gene expression from outside forces. Different from a mutation, epigenetics changes lie not in the DNA itself, but rather in its surroundings, and the enzymes and other chemicals that orchestrate how DNA molecule unwinds in various sections to make proteins or even new cells. So the study of epigenetics, there are a lot of different studies on it. There's studies about stress, how stress actually changes these DNA expressions, how different foods change this DNA expressions. We've seen how language could change this DNA expressions. Like everything that we basically do on a carnal level changes our DNA. Like everything that we just put into our bodies and our minds even change our DNA. And I wanted to bring this out in the last study because the way that we love changes our DNA as well. You know what I mean? Those things actually alter our DNA. So there was. All right, so epigenetics here. Some of the studies that were important was food, and why it was important because they dug up bodies that went through famine, and when the famine was over, they dug up the bodies that lived through the plentiful times of these tribes' existence. So the difference is we seen that the ones that actually didn't eat gluttonously, that went through certain points of famine, they actually lived longer, 6 years longer than the ones that ate plentifully and gluttonously. You know, so we can see that in the scriptures when we talk about gluttony. We see that it actually can kill you, you know, and also, you know, since these things are in the Torah, when the Torah tells us to honor thy mother and thy father, that thy days be long upon the land which Elohim gave you, that always stuck to me like, man, how can really honoring your father and your mother prolong your life, you know, in so many different ways. Not just in the carnal sense of, look, if you don't do that, you're going to die. Like you gonna get, you gonna touch the stove, you gonna burn your fingers, or you gonna burn down the house. And no, actually in the DNA expressions itself. You know, not listening to the order and structure that they got, that their moms had, that their great grandmas had, and breaking that order actually changes the DNA and actually can kill you. Through disease, through cancers. All these things are in the epigenetics. Cancers, heart disease, all of these things are in the DNA expressions. Us eating fried chicken and wondering like, oh, I got diabetes, my mom got diabetes. It's not really it's not really genetic. It's these expressions that are being changed and altered that are causing these things in us. And we can be the ones that awake like Jacob and become Israel and change these DNA expressions. You know, we can actually do that. But we keep falling in generational curses that just keep repeating themselves. So these expressions just keep passing on to generation and generation and generation. Because what they found in these studies is
the things that the grandma had, the kids had. You know what I mean? So these things are passed on by ignorance, by just doing whatever we think we want to do with our bodies, not really realizing that it's going to affect our grandchildren. You know what I mean?
And what Nas was doing, like the statement, like it made me really understand more just the whole, that I always talk about it, like when you see families that, like I grow up with families who maybe it's a lot of homophobic people in their family, or not homophobic, homosexual, or a lot of families who got a lot of like crackheads or whatever, like they're on, then down the line you'll see a cousin, or you'll see like, just like I remember when I was like going through a drinking situation, and somebody was telling me like, you got to be careful with that when you come from parents who were addicts. It doesn't matter if they, and when I thought of that, I'm thinking like, well, maybe that's because the kids saw them do that. But it'd be really in the gene pool,
Right.
even down to being like a drug dealer. Like I know when finding out who the real paternity father was to Nigeria's that like coming up like the whole that like he was raised under a 2-parent home, but that whole even that type of gene. I didn't understand it because I felt like it all would come from being like exposed to. Like if you're around it, you're around and see your parents selling drugs, or you see your mom being with another woman. That's like learned. But if you're not around it, like you're totally separated. You might have been raised by this one, that's good, but you're doing things of your original bloodline. You know, and I'm like, how? Like, you know, I mean, I would just think this in your, like, I'm just saying it's in the bloodline, but just hearing it really is really in the DNA, because you could be raised by somebody totally different. That's nothing like what your actual biological parents are, but still be doing what they did. You don't even know them. You don't know them from a can of paint. Don't do nothing what they do. You're spitting image of your father or your mother, like literally on top of what you may have learned.
Right. So we definitely see these things playing out in real life. Next slide. All right, and this is one of the reasons why we can see it playing out in real life. Actually, right here, it's something called methylation, right? Mm-hmm. So methylation is the actual DNA expressions, right? So this study was done on 2 different monkeys. One monkey, the mother had its original mom, and the mother was actually loving and caring, and she would lick them and feed them and things like that. The second monkey on the right is a surrogate monkey, had a surrogate mother, which didn't do any of these things, just basic feeding and just basic things that, you know, that didn't really contribute to any type of loving environment, right? Mm-hmm. And you can see the DNA expressions changing because the green represents low methylation, which is changes in the DNA. On the left, you see there are limited changes to the DNA. If any, you see a little bit of red on that left, a little bit of red on the bottom, but not much changes in the DNA. Now, when you see on the right side, you can see it's totally high in methylation, which all those DNA expressions are changed. You know, now there is a small purpose to this because sometimes in nature, the mother will treat the kids like this or the babies like this to get them ready for a stressful environment that they're ready to prepare them, right? Preparing them for a stressful environment. But nevertheless, you can see these things actually changing from just simply loving them, just simply care. As babies, your DNA is changed, right? Is that like y'all preparing Israel? Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say that we need to be prepared to hate. No, be prepared for hate or stress. Like I wouldn't take the notion that stress is needed. I think that when we see this and we see the way our people are and the broken families that we are used to, you know what I mean? It definitely is a struggle, and it definitely affects us for the rest of our life. And people wonder why we crazy. Mm-hmm. So I wonder why he just wigged out. I had a best friend that killed his mom. His mom was actually on drugs. You know what I'm saying? They had a totally different relationship than I got with my mom. So we can see why he did it. I will never condone it, but his DNA expressions was changed as a young man. So he had issues. You know what I mean? So these are the things that affect our people. When I say all this,
I'm not talking about nobody else.
Right.
I relate everything of this lesson to my
us.
people, what we see and go through every day, and the stresses that we go through that affect us for the rest of our lives, man. Like, and this is why it's important for us to start with new generations and to make sure that they don't go through the same generational curses that we've been taken a part of all these years.
This lack of knowledge is definitely a leading issue, because like dumbing us down has like across the board, turning men against the black man against the black woman, breaking up the home. It's been a super dominant effect. Like there's no unity and nothing. Like there's no like there's like I see so many divisions just in families alone. Like my family alone, like like I come from a big family and didn't even know. I grew up looking at other families, but there be like so much dark things may happen in somebody's family, and so now they're raising their kids only be just for each other. You know what I'm saying? But they don't even know down the line that'll cause their kids to have their kids only for each other. So they're not even they're not even coming up with their. It was all about you and your sister and brother, but now you have your kids, and you're still not. So they're not even growing up with your sister and brother's kids. So it's like so much division. Just like
we just talking about that.
So the devil, so basically the devil or enemy is playing onto the max. Like he got us dumbed down everything, because everything is all tied into one. So everything was the broken homes, everything, their whole plan was they were geniuses. We know that the devil is just as he's powerful, the Babel and everything. So his plan is just all the way to the max. If we was on that side, we will be so victorious, for is the plan that they had set out for us is like all the way like perfect to a T. So, perfect to a T. So if we see that in a negative way, just imagine if we get on the other side with the positive way and imagine what it would be then.
Right. Because that knowledge, that's like even when you think of science, the negativity they did with science, but science actually will on a positive aspect, and just knowing all this alone, like one of the main things that just it's crazy talking about this, because I think a while ago we was watching Dr. Wells. He talks about this how this food what it does to your brain. Like our body really can heal itself, but like the things that we clog it with is killing off those genes. So now we're going to the white man for medication to help now these medications might be helping this, but now we're coming with all these side effects.
Right.
And when it's all like I read an article where this guy, his mom had dementia, and all he did was a white guy at that. You know what I mean? So his mom, he's changed her diet, gave her cranberries and straight like spirit cranberries and nuts. And then reversed it. She got her memory like right back. You know what I'm saying? Just from just changing her diet.
Right.
My cousin came in my job. She's like, yeah, because I had cancer. I didn't know that. Now she's older. She's older than my mom. She gets young. And I'm like, oh, I didn't know that. She was like, yeah, I turned down the surgery and the radiation. She said she turned it down because she was afraid because she saw what it done. So she changed a couple little things and just she's cancer free. Radiation and chemo shut people's system down. And like I know the one time Christmas Joey came in on me and said, yeah, you ever notice when a person will be living with cancer for 30 years, but once they were told they had cancer, now everything's just like, so that just like shows in itself. And not saying it's okay and it wasn't destroying them. I'm not saying that, but like for it to be for you to tell me and me to accept like I got cancer, so whatever in our thoughts accepting that caused these symptoms. I mean, I know somebody who faked being pregnant. Hold on real quick. I know somebody even faked being pregnant to the point where I didn't even know she was lying. Because she really was like showing, like all the time, like really had, like, so it'd be crazy. So don't even attack it and tapping into that. No perfecting that in a negative way. I can see where this is all made it bad, but I guess turned around.
Brother Dreno.
Yeah.
I want to, if you don't mind, I would like to pull out 3 scriptures, 3 verses out of Deuteronomy 28. It's totally related to what you're saying. Mm-hmm. I understand that the enemy, has made his plans to destroy the family and do things like that to hurt us and separate us. But Deuteronomy 28 said that these curses would come upon us because of our disobedience. Mm-hmm. So Deuteronomy 28, starting at verse 54, says, so that the man that is tender among you and very delicate, his eyes shall be evil towards his brother, and toward the wife of his bosom, and toward the remnant of his children, which he shall leave. Now, we're looking at this picture with the surrogate mother and the real mother, right? And we're talking about motherly love, but that fatherly love is important too. And I'm sure that affects your DNA, right? So if I drop down to verse 56, it says, the tender and delicate woman among you, which would not adventure to set the sole of her foot upon the ground for delicateness and tenderness, her eyes shall be evil toward the husband of her bosom, and toward her son, and toward her daughter. Now, that's part of our curses. So when we have these generational curses that carry these traits that carry, those curses are in our DNA. Now, if we are prophesied or cursed to hate our children, right, to hate our son and our daughter, and then the father's curse to leave them, do you see that negative effect that it has on our DNA, and how when we break these generational curses, we don't treat our children that way, we don't do our children that way, so that DNA trait can somehow fall out of our tribe or bloodline or lineage, so to speak. Hallelujah.
Hallelujah. 100%. All these things are basically in our DNA. Our DNA is basically information. When you think about DNA, and I'm not going to get too graphic, but a man and a woman, a man downloads himself, his DNA into a woman. Like when a woman receives it, right, she downloads the information. That's all information travel. That's what I'm saying. Like they base the computer off of us. Mm-hmm. The computer is based off of us, our bodies. All right. We can take it to the next slide, Aki. Okay. You want to read it today?
Sure. For thou hast possessed my reins, thou hast covered me in my mother's womb. I will praise thee, for I am fearfully, wonderfully made. Marvelous are thy works, and that my soul knoweth right well. My substance was not hid from thee, when I was made in secret, and curiously wrought in the lowest parts of the earth. Thy eyes did see my substance, yet being unperfect, and in thy book all my members were written, which in continuance was fashioned, when as yet there was none of them.
Hallelujah. 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 All right, so it says, for my reign, for thou hast possessed my reins, right? My organs, my inner parts. Mm-hmm. Thou hast covered me in my mother's womb. So he knew you before you even came into this earth, right? You know the scriptures say that. Right? And I will praise thee, for I am fearful and wonderfully made, right? Marvelous are thy works, and that my soul knoweth right well. So you are already destined. Your DNA is already written before you're even born. And that information don't start from when you grow up. That information is already there, written into you, right? To grow into it, right? To grow into the actual DNA, right? That's just like it kills a lot of that evolution stuff. Don't get me started. That's all. Right? Right? Got me started. We will go to that. That's today. That's a whole nother lesson. We're leaving out here at 10 o'clock at night. It says, my substance was not hid from thee, right? Right. When I was made in secret. Secret. Right, made in secret. It was made without anybody knowing. So this was made without the father and mother. This has nothing to do with parents. This is between you and YAH.
You and YAH.
You know what I mean? And curiously brought into the lowest parts of the earth. The ground out of the Adam, of the Domni, right?
Domni, yeah.
Thine eyes did see my substance, right? So yet being unperfect, right? And thy book all my members were written. So this is encoded, engraved into those organs, or that DNA being encoded into us from the beginning, which in continuance were fashioned when as yet there was none of them. So it's saying that my DNA was I was already there when it didn't even exist. Right? That's what he's saying there. He says, when as yet there was none of my members. My members wasn't even here, but I still was encoded, I still was engraved, I still had that information. You already written it from the beginning, right? Next slide.
Your existence before your existence.
Right, you know what I mean? It has all to do with energy as well. So this is the brain. We're going to talk about something called neuroscience or neurotheology real quick. Each one of these things that we're talking about can have its own study. I just I just tried to put everything together, touch on things just a little bit, not get too deep and nothing. But yeah, just summing it up, because actually each one of these subjects is deep. So this one is neurotheology, and this is dude named Andrew Hooper does a lot of, not Andrew Hooper on Facebook today, but he's a scientist that studies neuroscience, like how religion or spirituality, even not really just so religion, but all forms of spirituality, like monks and Buddhists and Hindus and meditation and prayer, and actually reading different religious texts, whether it be the Bible or the Quran, and how these effects have on the brain. They do this because they study the brain and see where the blood flows, and then where the blood flows is what's being activated, what's being stimulated. So when they read these things on the brain, they do an atheist, and they'll do a person that is more religious or spiritual. When they study the atheist part, a lot of times the part of the brain will light up that has to do with disgust or discomfort in the atheist when they read the text. And when they do this with somebody that is more spiritual, the frontal lobe lights up, and that has to do with receiving something or actually in agreement or something that you're paying attention to. The frontal lobe has to do with attention span and how you're good and well you're attentive and how you're paying attention. So next slide. The neuroscience of religion, also known as neurotheology and as spiritual neuroscience, attempts to explain religious experience and behaviors in neuroscientific terms. It is the study of correlations of neutral phenomenon with subjective experiences of spirituality and hypothesis to explain these phenomena. So this is talking about the study, like I just said, this is just a technical term of what I just said, the study of neuroscience. I just wanted everybody to see that this is a real thing. It's not nobody's making out. There's real studies of this. That dude that does these studies the best, he actually takes people that have been doing meditations or have been spiritual like for 30 years and brings them and hooks them up to these machines and actually does these studies. And the studies show that the brain is hardwired to receive this spirituality. Yeah. You know what I mean? And some people are more spiritual than others. You know what I mean? That's another picture here. Next slide. Please. Thank you. For by him were all things created that are in heaven and that are in earth, invisible, or visible and invisible, whether they be thrones or dominions or principalities or powers, all things were created by him and for him, right? This is actually talking about the Mashiach. Read the whole verse. Chapter is talking about the Mashiach. But we see here that things were created, invincible and visible. And that word powers is actually what exursa, exusa in the Greek. And the definition, two of those definitions are real interesting. It says superhuman or physical or mental powers. So there's things that we can manifest within ourselves. It might not look like Superman, but it will look like something that I mean, like I've been in the middle of the study. I came across something that said that our brains have the power to manipulate weather. I read that in Revelation when the two prophets were able to manipulate the weather. And I always thought about that, like, man, they're going to be able to manipulate the weather. Yo, that's crazy. But when you start to study these things and people of higher enlightenment, they can see that some of these things are actually possible. Excuse me. Next slide. Corinthians, 1 Corinthians chapter. What ye know not, that your body is the temple of the Holy Ghost, or Ruach Kadosh, which is in you, which ye have Elohim, and ye are not your own, for ye are brought with a price. Wherefore glorify Elohim in your body and in your spirit, which are YAH, right? So this is saying that he is in us. Right. Now, we can look at that as like spiritually in us, but he is literally in us. Like, from the beginning, when it says in Genesis 1st chapter, the 23rd verse, 26th verse, it says that we are created in his image. You know what I mean? So that's not just an image, that is actually in the DNA itself. The actual
was more so about bringing it out.
Right.
And
That's it.
really learning anything.
It's already in you. It's got to activate. Right. It's like I don't know. We was talking about that with Jacob. You know what I mean? How Jacob activated those things within himself. You know what I mean?
And that's why I was talking about Joshua and I said, like, it's even with like not gold. It's all said and done. Walk out the school. And yeah, we do have it. We know that. But we actually have the same everything that he has to do it. So there's no.
Right. That is true.
He said, "Let's do greater things than he like him." When it's all said and done, he could do it, and it says it in the scripture. Right. We can do it. We can't. They know. Oh, we're gonna fall short. There's no excuse.
Right. Basically, by making those mistakes, you set yourself up for it. Right. Right. Oh, we know we fall short. I'm about to fall. I'm going to fry. Don't speak into it. Right. Instead of saying, you know what I mean? We actually do fall. Oh, dang, I failed. Right. Let me get back up. You know what I mean? Don't speak it into existence. Right. If it happens, it happens. Right. So be it. Deal with it accordingly. Right. But by speaking it into existence, you set yourself up for failure.
Right. I had read this book. And it was called The Paradise Now. At the beginning of it, it was about that road. It had an interlude. It was about this man. It was a bum sitting on the side of the road, sitting on his chest. But he was sitting there for like 20-something years. Like, he just was always sitting on his chest. And somebody came past and said something. I don't remember verbatim, but he was like something about the chest. And then the guy never looked in the chest, but the chest had all this gold in it. He said, "But if you stop and take the time to look inside of yourself." And that's what the whole thing, but he was sitting on his thing for years on the side of the road and never knew that it was already just inside of him. Wow. He had to bring it up.
Well, you know, one of the key things is to do a fearless and moral inventory of yourself, family. It's like when you take your car to get an oil change. You know, when you see you cutting up, going straight, you gotta stop. I'm like, oh, let me, it's time for me. And y'all get together. So examine
before y'all spank.
Yeah, y'all spank.
You don't want that.
Now, the thing is,
about that earlier.
Now, one of the troubling things is that we know what the words say. The words say none of us righteous or rags are like filthy rags, or good deeds are like filthy rags. And you know, and if we say there's no sin in us, but lie and truth ain't in us, we also know the scripture says what? None perfect but one. You feel me? All that fall short of the glory of YAH, just because it said it, you gotta keep living like it. Have fall short of the glory of YAH. Didn't you fall short of the glory of YAH before you came into the truth? Right. But we don't do it as much. See, it's not that we're without sin. I'm not sinless. I sin less. You understand? That's a big difference. So when people say to me, "You think you're better than me?" I'm like, no. Well, you think you're holier than that. I might be. Guess what?
They say, you think you're holier than thou? I tell them, like, I'm not some about that. I strive to be. It's like, what?
Or they think.
It's crazy because even for this our thought process, everything. Like, it's not just about committing sin, just the way that we conduct ourselves with each other, just all the way around. It's not just about sin. Now, we want to be all the way right, just our thought process. We don't ever want to have them slip ups in our thought process. We don't have to. We don't have to.
Right. Well, you really don't have to, but as long as we got this flesh going on, man, we successful in doing that. Right. Because the spirit is willing, the flesh is weak. That's scripture for you. I'm not saying that. I'm not going to hit you with no he says it or lean on my own understanding. I'm going to go with strictly what the word says.
Hey, Brother Dreno. Brother Dreno.
Yeah.
Hey, before we go to the next slide, I just wanted to bring out, thinking about the decalcification of your pineal gland. It's like a hard rock or a hard stone on it over your pineal gland. Now, Deuteronomy 30 tells us that the Most High said that he would take away your stony heart and give you a fleshy heart. You know, I'm for some reason my mind is associating your stony pineal gland being replaced with a fleshy one. You know, this is a real deep, real powerful lesson you bringing out right here.
Hey, Dick.
Go ahead.
I wanted to say, because a lot of us have what? Tough skin, stony hearts, because of our childhood and our upbringing. We go through the circumstances of life and where we at, and we develop like I said, we develop a stone heart and leather-like skin. You feel me? So we can withstand anything. We fight each other, throw names at each other. It doesn't bother us what people think about us. But guess what happens when you transform in a certain set of heart and it becomes fleshly? Yeah, stuff start messing with you. What people think does matter because it's forcing you to look at yourself. You know, because you don't want to be sitting there knowing that you look like this to these people out here. You want to present yourself. You want to represent y'all. You know, so when people go, you this, you that makes you step back and look at yourself, man. Maybe you need your heart circumcised so it can become fleshly. You know?
Hallelujah, hallelujah. You ready for the next slide, bro?
Hold on 1 second. Brother D was talking.
Oh, I'm sorry. I couldn't hear him.
True.
Is he talking now?
Nah, go ahead. I'm cool. Go ahead.
You sure?
Eyes and 10.
I just want to say one thing before we leave this specifically. This slide. Looking at 19. Or do you not know that your body is the dwelling place of the set-apart spirit who is in you, which you have from Elohim, and you are not your own? Yeah. I think we all need to realize we are not our own. Like, the more and more that we give ourselves to him daily and understand we are nothing more but humble servants to him, the more and more we allow that Ruach HaKodesh to really reside in us and become us as it should be. So with that being said, although the flesh does take, it only takes the power we allow it to have. You know what I mean? And I think that last line, you know, understanding that we are not our own, is something we all have to really do daily.
I wish I was a lot like Enoch. If you study Enoch, one of the most things prolific he did, you know what he did? He stayed away from everybody. Yeah. They didn't want to be bothered with you Hebrews. They had to go find him, man. Where Enoch at? Where Enoch is?
What's stopping us from doing
He's
that?
sitting up in his high places with him and y'all. Excuse me, y'all. Let me see what these Hebrews want. Come down there, you know. He didn't mess with a lot of people. You know that? Because he didn't condone that. He tried to stay in tune with the He tried to stay in tune. You know, and I peeped that about him, man.
If he went down there, he might start falling and backsliding.
Backsliding, right. Because I guess that's trying to be set apart.
Right.
from those things.
Right.
Now, is that kind of being set apart, or is that kind of taking the easy way out? Because
that's being set apart.
Yeah, because I mean, I'm just answering because it's easier for you probably, or anybody probably, like when you're dealing with other human beings and different emotions and stuff like that, you might be better off just because you know the Most High, so I'm gonna just stay away because I don't want to deal with Dreno and it's what he got going on. So is it like, to me it was like a little bit, I mean I understand what y'all said, but it's still like a little bit like,
but that's what the Most High wants anyway.
What?
To set yourself apart.
Set yourself apart, but setting yourself apart don't mean stay apart away from everybody.
Well, no.
Can I say something regarding what Brother Chris is saying? What I think he's speaking on is where I'm at right now. He's saying to set yourself apart, sometimes it's a measure or it's a way of avoidance. I'm in a set apart place right now. I was thinking about Enoch earlier, and even thinking about our brother Hamashiach when he just would get mad and just set himself apart from everything because he got tired of dealing with it.
Right.
He's talking about, but it is truly sometimes it's a measure of avoidance because you just don't want to have to deal with things, but you shouldn't necessarily do that. So, brother, I understand exactly what you're saying, and I'm only speaking because that was a cut to me personally.
Right. And also, it depends on an individual. There's nothing that's why we have judges. That's why we have certain structures put in place, because these laws and commandments cannot be for everybody just cut clean and dry. Right. There's certain circumstances, certain situations that have to be judged righteously and that have to be taken into consideration. So like you have like a person that will be totally separate apart, like John the Baptist just going to the wilderness, or the Essenes as a group of people that just discontinued themselves from the Holy Land altogether and went by the shore. And that's where we get the Dead Sea Scrolls to this day, from a people that was just separated from the world. But you also have the disciples and Yeshua that was in the trenches that were accused of certain things because the company they kept. You know, they were accused of being rigorous eaters of meat, and they were accused of being wine bibbers. Why? Because that's who the people they was around. You know what I mean? And you know, one person might go that way, one person might go this way, but when they came together, John the Baptist baptized the Mashiach, and that's when the Mashiach received the Spirit. Right. So it depends on your journey. Like me, myself, you know, I still be in the hood. I still associate with known drug dealers, just to keep it a buck. You know, but certain things that I say to them, I can see that it's starting to change them in certain aspects sometimes. So we also have to keep in mind to be a light to the darkness. So that's why we're here. If we can separate light from the darkness, then what is good is the light. You know, they can't see over there. So you have to bring your light over there so people can see.
And I think just to lay on back off of what Chris was explaining, that sometimes a stand away, which you might feel, like he said, you don't have to stay away to be set apart. We got to take our set apartness to those people who need help. That's why, like at that time, like you did mention, when Enoch did stay away, those people were searching after him because some people needed him. You know what I mean? And they cried like to him, like, not to do that, you know. Yeah, but then he eventually, though, you know, like he went 4 days, and then his 4 days turned in only 3 days, and then his 3 days turned on to like once, however it went. He started to not be with them as much, and sometimes that is not good for the people, especially when you are that strong light, because people do need that strong light.
The only reason why I mentioned that,
Dreno grant the reins back.
The reins back. The only reason why I mentioned the man in the first place is because, first of all, he's only him and Elijah. They didn't find death. I was using him as an analogy, not that you stay away from him, but that he was in tune with YAH for real. And he would go back. They would have to look for him. He set himself apart from them. Just like when I go back to Center Avenue, you know what they say? Hey, Dreno, I don't see you down here no more. Why are you? Because I do not party with y'all. You understand? But I do come back and explain things. But I do not stay in that kind of that environment. Because what's the saying say? If you stay in the barbershop too long, you're going to get a haircut. So sometimes, yes, it's good to stay away because abstinence makes you stronger. Abstinence makes you focus on yourself. You cannot focus on yourself always caught up in the party. You can't see the frame when you're in the picture. You got to get out of the picture and you can see the frame. That's all I was saying.
I kind of forgot. What I was,
I'll bring it back.
My point, but I was going to say like I had like I don't know if y'all ever heard me speak on a real not like kind of I don't know the whole transition, but just me as a person, or just like each individual is different. These last months, I mean, even learning like the issues with myself as far as like the humility that's needed. Me and her just had a conversation recently, and after that conversation, we're back talking daily. It's more so me even knowing how and when to speak. Because certain, like as far as being this like I know I was getting frustrated in the beginning because I wanted everybody to get it. You know, so forgetting the whole thing with me and how I don't get it. I don't get it on a regular basis. So I can't be so like not showing grace when grace has been shown on me. So just even being back around now at the end, it's not a frustration on either end. Like it's more like just even her to even reach back out to me, let me know like okay, like I needed to even learn, like I even know how to handle these type of situations, like knowing how what to say, when to say, when to use the wisdom to say something. Everything might not that might be having the wisdom to know. You know what I can't play this right now. It will come out, but I'm doing that. I'm doing that.
Next slide, bro. All right, so this comes to the God gene, right? The gene that is in the body that actually makes us more spiritual. A lot of people, there was a Dr. Andrew Fry or something, or Cruz. He was an atheist, started studying more about science and became religious because he just can't deny it that the Most High is in the science itself strongly and abundantly, to the point where a lot of these people that teach these things for science and religion or science and spirituality have challenged every creationist and humanist in the field. All of these doctors from Harvard, it was actually 4,500 scientists that these people who study these things went and challenged, and they didn't get not one response from all 4,600 of these professors of these colleges. Like, they don't want no smoke with this science, man. They don't, because they know the problem is that scientists are mostly atheists, so they're the ones in charge of these things, so they can dictate what they say. The victors create the history. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? The scientists are the ones that tell us what to believe. And this goes back to us being able to educate ourselves so we're not tricked by these evil atheist scientists that seek to destroy the created. Mm-hmm. This is the creation. You know what I mean? It's not to be worshipped. It's not to be looked at like it's the end all be all. Science books change every 2 or 3 years. The Bible has not changed in its original form. And it won't change. You know what I mean? Because that's encoded. That's written. Mm-hmm. So we have the God gene here. It's actually a gene that is in the body, scientifically proven, that makes one more spiritual, whether it be through meditation or religious text. Next slide. How much we got to go? I just want to know, can we keep it to the subject of the genetic structure? All right, I'm almost done. So this is the God gene. It's the God gene hypothesis proposes that human spirituality is influenced by hereditary, and that a specific gene called the vascular monoamine transporter 2, VMAT2, is the actual part or protein of the DNA that is the God gene. Next slide.
I can't wait to get that book.
So this is the part, I just took a picture of it in this book that I'm reading. And before we even get into the slide, I just want to go a little bit more deeper into the God gene, that every human being has that VMAT2 gene, but some people have an extra protein on it. When you break down the code of that particular DNA, the VMAT2, there's different letters that go into it. One directly is an A particle or A protein on this DNA, and the other is a C protein that is on this DNA. Now, they studied 1,001 people, and what they came to the conclusion of is that the C protein actually is the one that enhances the VMAT2 gene, and the A protein is more susceptible to atheism, to non-spiritual people. You know what I'm saying?
Is that what they're trying to figure out to see who has that C?
I mean, that's what the study was showing.
Right.
See who they did, like women and different ages, and they broke down into different ethnic groups here. This is what I'm about to say right here. So when they broke down the different ethnic groups, it says race and ethnicity also were potentially important. Although most of our subjects were European ancestry, there were enough African American, Asian Pacific Islanders, and Hispanics in the study to check to see if there was a substantial difference between ethnic groups and the strength of the gene. There was not. Keep the wordplay in this, right? Just keep to understand the wordplay. Just follow me one time. Y'all still with us, Zoom?
I'm stable.
Yes, sir. We with you.
All right. So there was not. So they're saying that there's not, right? If anything, the genetic effect was a tad stronger in the minority groups than the white majority, albeit not so significant, though.
Right. But if you're saying that the majority of the group that were tested were European ancestors, but there was enough of them. We had enough of them. So what you're saying is, had we had more of them, it would have been way more substantial and significant.
Right.
Like that's
because you got people wordplay. Because it says there was no significance. Then you turn around and say, but it was. See, the real wordplay in that was that between African Americans, Asian, Pacific Islanders, and Hispanics, there was no difference. That's what they're really saying here. You know, where these other nationalities, it's saying that white people is separated and saying that there was a significant change in frequencies with them. They are the atheists. They are the ones less susceptible to receive spirituality. And we can see that. When we see that our people were ripped apart by horses, burned at the stakes, hung all over the place, all over the world, we still took on a higher power. We still praise YAH. We still, in any way that we can find. You know what I'm saying? Even if these African Hamites, they might worship rivers and trees, but they're worshiping. You know, the Asians, Buddha, Hindus, Indians, they all, but the white man has always extracted religion from someone else and used it for carnal things and power and riches and to have dominion over the rest of the races that really are taken advantage of because they are spiritual people. Right. It's easy for somebody that don't believe. What he say? What's a God to a non-believer? Right. It's easy for them to take advantage. I was watching this one show about the Ottoman Empire, and the enemies was like, we're going to take advantage of their mercy. So they send a dude all beat up
and they tried to help him. He ended up infiltrating the whole camp. So these are the things that they have done because they are less spiritual. And even in their own studies, as much as they want to downplay it, we can definitely see that it's not to be downplayed. And there is a difference in spirituality and in the God gene. So when in their own study, it's definitely saying that more of us have a C protein and more of them have the A protein.
Would that have to do with if you have the Neanderthal gene as well?
I mean, I really didn't dig into that, what I mean? And the problem with these type of studies is we only get this little bit of salt base, what I mean? Just that sprinkle, because they're in charge of this research. None of us have the funding, the money, or the resources to put these things together. So we can only get the crumbs that they dropping off the table, and we have to turn them into full meal. You know what I'm saying at this point?
I was just saying, I wonder if I was supposed I would need to be an archaeologist. I'm like, I wonder, like, do I have to have the money to go do these studies, or what? Like, do they?
I got some book
like, I'm kind of thinking about this into a little bit, but like, even with, like, I know a rabbi said, like, even we die, we tell the truth. So if in a book, think of books that on a large scale, or people don't really read, and I know these are powerful books. Like even just you saying about all of these other races and minorities, the Caribbean island people. When Columbus landed on that coast, he thought he was with the Indians. They welcomed him. They gave him all types. They treated him like a king. They didn't like, and he took straight up. So he got those goods, went back home, and said, "Oh yeah, they're over there. They're what do you call them? I think it was the Inca Indians, one of the Indians." But he was saying they don't have no type of like wow. At that time, they were like taking hearts up to the sacrifice of hearts. Like they're over there, but they treated him good, and when he came back, him and the rest of the people he brought with him, and took straight advantage of this nice people that were they definitely they use the scriptures to even enslave us even more. So that's why people who aren't religious can say things like, the religion has enslaved us, because they use it against us. They put it in our ancestors' hand and had them pull out service, which was like, oh, being your master. When that's not what that scripture wasn't specifically talking about those situations, right? You know what I mean?
Anybody else got questions on English statement? Next slide.
I had a statement about, like you said, about the wordplay, something like they're still using even today in the media, even with this pandemic that's going on, how they'll give you these numbers. Like my mom was reading this one study they did, and like Tifa just said, even in their statement, they lie, but they have the truth, and you just got to catch it.
Right.
So like in the one statistics they had about the pandemic, it said 119 people caught it in one day. And out of that 119, only 22 were our people. And then it said something like 20 people died from it, that out of those 119, but only one person was our people. But then they turned around and said that we had it more. How you just in the numbers, you just told on yourself in the numbers and then tried to lie and say our people got it more. How?
But to even say we're a minority and we're not. Like, and I always pull up that statement that Ben Franklin said. Ben Franklin said, why bring these African Americans into this new world and have them build it up when everywhere across the world is predominantly Black or tawny? What was the other word? I didn't know it meant Black. I thought it
more.
No, it said Black, tawny. It was another word. I was like, that don't mean Black. And he was like, yes, it do. We look it up. So he said, there's no purely white. He even mentioned people that we think is like, now they're kind of white now. But he mentioned Italian. He mentioned all these people. He said they were tawny. It was another word, but whatever the case may be, but the fact that they call us minorities, and we're clearly not we're not the minority. White is the only minority, but it's in there. You can see it. Yeah, you can see. So the wordplay definitely, but at the same time, the truth be right there.
Hey, brother Dreno.
Yeah.
Before we go to the next slide, right? I'm thinking to myself, you know, for people to have a totally calcified pineal gland or a lower spiritual vibration, you know, it takes a certain type of people to be able to feed people's children to the alligators, or to be able to drop a bomb on Hiroshima and destroy so many people, to just to have a heartless, what we would call heartless or savage type personality. You know, that's interesting that it's associated with the same people who has a lower spiritual frequency. I find that very interesting.
Absolutely. Absolutely interesting. I mean, this says so much about what we're going through here in America.
And cable people is trying to make me.
Mom, mute your mic, mother.
Who's that? Okay, do that.
Ready for the next slide, bro?
Before we go to the next slide, though, I just want to reel it back in to just the key on the point of all this, because we got into a lot of different things for our science, but the key to this study is application. Right. You know, that is the most important thing to this walk. I mean, we could read all we want, you know, we could meditate and uncalcify pineal glands and all that, but until we apply these things, you know, we're nothing. You know, we're still going to be low vibrational beings without application. You know,
even worse because we know.
Right. Even worse. Still double stripes. Say double stripes to those.
I'd rather not know and then just know and then still not. That's we're dumber than the ones that's got.
Right. No doubt. All right, next slide up. Says James 1:22, but be ye doers of the word, and not hearers only, deceiving your own selves. Right? So being doers of the word, this is the key. This is free game right here. You know, being doers of the word, being doers of your own word. You know, you say you want to do something, try to do it. I mean, if you fall short, you fall short. But everything we come out of our mouth, we must be able to do. You know what I mean? And the things of the scriptures, if we're reading them, then we have to apply. I always say all the time, like, man, I'm tired of reading about it. I know a lot of people take that the wrong way, but I'm at the point where I'm ready to always try to apply this. Like, let's do this. Like, there ain't but so much reading that you're going to be able to do if you ain't doing the applying. You're really unbalanced. Right. You know what I'm saying? If you could learn the whole Bible, but if you haven't applied the whole Bible, then you're unbalanced. Yes, all of that that's not applied is in vain. It was vain reading.
Right. I mean, like, so what you believe, so what you read, so what you know, you ain't applying it, it was worthless.
Right. Exactly. Because our enemies enslaved us with the word. Right. You know what I mean?
It could probably feel like a lot better. I noticed that like a lot of balance. Like I'm small things, a little things that I'm grateful for. I'm just even seeing the difference in the relationship between me and my child. You know, I can imagine once everything is perfected. But it's like that one song I've been listening to, Al Blue. And I was like listening to what they're singing. I didn't even realize they were singing the commandments until last week. I liked the song because of the beat, but even just hearing them sing the commandment, and when you hear what they're saying, like, why would you not want to do that? Why would I not want to do this? Why would I not want? Like, it just the whole thing. I see why he's saying the scripture. You know, you're supposed to be doing this with gladness in your heart, right? Like not doing it because it's the commandment. But I see why he said that. You know, like I really just see like that. You know, I wouldn't want to, you know, lie to my neighbor because I don't want to be lied to. You know what I'm saying? I don't, regardless of, because at one point in time I used to think it was okay to lie to the police or to the judge. You know what I mean? I felt like that, but those lies be coming back to your loved one. Then I'm talking about this loved one, but here I am. I got you. This it's the whole thing just carrying having that light at all times. Like,
all right, bro. Next slide. All right, so it says, so every good tree bringeth forth good fruit, but a corrupt tree bringeth forth evil fruit. A good tree cannot bring forth evil fruit. Neither can a corrupt tree bring forth good fruit. Every tree that bringeth not forth good fruit is hewn down and cast into the fire. Wherefore by their fruits ye shall know them. Right? That's Matthew 7 and 17 to 20. And totally a whole nother study in itself. The Bible speaks of trees as people, from Genesis all the way to the New Testament. It speaks of trees being people, so we know that this is definitely a representation of people bringing forth good fruit. Those that are less susceptible. So it says, it says a corrupt tree. Well, a corrupt tree definitely would have that aging and not be as on a higher frequency than a tree that is producing good fruit. And it also says that a tree that produces not any fruit shall be cut down and cast into the fire. So if you're not a doer of this word, producing fruit, you will be thrown into the cutting down probably hurt. Then thrown into the fire after that. You're done. Because you are stagnant in your walk. You know what I mean? So these are things that we have to keep in mind, especially when we start to gain longevity in this walk. That we do not become stagnant. That we're not just a tree that is an old tree that is not producing fruit anymore. You know what I'm saying? So, because there's another scripture where the Mashiach seen a fig tree. And it wasn't real fruit. I don't even think it was in the season, though. Right. You know what I'm saying? So, it wasn't even in the season. Not much. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, he still destroyed the tree. And his name was like, right. So we always have to be producing fruit. We are trees that have to produce fruit in the winter in any condition. Right. There's no excuse. Depression isn't an excuse. Right. Poverty isn't an excuse. Right. There is no excuse to a deity that gave his only begotten son to the world. Okay? There's no excuse to a deity that gave up its own prophets. Right. You know what I'm saying? Peter got hung upside down. Right? We are not receiving, we shouldn't expect more mercy than them. Right? So we always have to make sure that we're producing these good fruits all year round and consistently.
Brother Dreno, can I speak on something?
No, sir.
Shut up. At the beginning of your lesson, you spoke about, one of our favorite sayings, that you got to understand the carnal before the spiritual. Right. Yesterday before the Shabbat came in, I was working in the backyard and I was cutting down some trees and everything. And there's this pear tree that's there. Now, I didn't cut it down this year. I cut down the tree next to it. And the tree next to it, I cut it down, then I chopped it up into wood or cut it into little pieces. And I put it in the fire and I burned it, right? Because it's in the way. It's not producing any fruit. And it's just in the way in my yard. And I looked at the pear tree and I'm thinking to myself, I'm gonna give this pear tree, I'm gonna see what it do this season. And if it produce rotten fruit again or bad fruit again, I'm gonna cut it down next year. And so just going over this last slide, understanding the carnal of it, I understand the spiritual of this Matthew 7. You know what I mean? That tree's in my way. Listen, I would like to expand my garden. I was thinking about cutting it down, maybe planting another fruit tree there. You know what I mean? I was thinking about, possibly planting another apple tree or something like that in its place. And I'm looking at this in Matthew 7, and I see Hamashiach doing the same thing, right? This tree right here is producing bad fruit. Now, he might cut the vines away like I did and try to give it room to breathe and produce better fruit. But, but if it continue to produce bad fruit, he gonna cut it down, man. And
so you cut the vines, like cut little things away, whether it's
right
things away, and then maybe cut this away, and then hopefully next year I can start producing some good fruit and some. Okay, yep.
Absolutely. But if it don't produce fruit, I might give it 2 years, 3 years, or Most High willing, I'm here 3 years. You know what I'm saying? Hopefully we leave out of here before then. But if I'm here, you know what I'm saying, and if I give it enough time and give it enough space to breathe, but cut all that debris that's choking it out, that's choking the life out of it out. If it produce good fruit, I'm gonna let it stay. But if not,
I'm
gonna chop it down.
Hey, Big Light, you know what? And even Donnie Yahoo, Tony had a grapevine in the backyard, right? At first it looked so beautiful. It was so beautiful with grapes on it and everything. Then over time, it just stopped producing, man. It rotted out and everything, and he got rid of it. And I told him, I said, that reminds me of how sin affects us. Because what happened was, to me, my analogy of it was that grapevine was fruitful at first. When he sowed the seed and it was growing up, doing all it was supposed to do. But something inside that same soil grew with it and choked it to stop the growth and stagnated it, would cause it an error, and it lacked producing fruit any further. I applied it to my life as well as one of my good friends who was like defending Hamashiach. And then he went at it with one of these Torah-only brothers, got knocked out in the second round, and he jumped up and joined them and turned around and started attacking Hamashiach right before my eyes. I was like, what? That blew my mind, because I never seen nothing like that in my life before. But to witness that, I associated it with Tony's grapevine, And it reminds me of the seeds that's thrown on the rocky ground. We get it, we enjoy it, we get the good news, and we run with it. But at some time we expire and get tired and give up and go right back into the old things we used to do,
Hallelujah.
That's right. Say that again. It's a marathon. It's a marathon, not a sprint. That's right.
That's what I was saying too. Once you start to get some years under your belt, you gotta still keep that same energy.
Fire, that same.
I think I gave that analogy one time with y'all when the Thames was leaning.
Yeah.
Y'all remember that. You always gotta keep that same spirit. When you're down bad, when you up, you have to keep that same spirit when you're down bad.
Right. You can apply that to the 10-8 too. That's wow. How you can apply that. Lean too. I love it. I can run it lean too.
All praises to the Most High, Brother Dreno. That was an excellent lesson.
Yeah, it was, brother.
These dot connectors up around, man.
Yeah, that was
right. Hey, Big Light. Hey, Big Light.
Yes, sir.
I don't like to toot all of our horns, but I think Steel City, Truth, Rules, Blessed by YAH, staying focused is in top class, man.
These days was that.
I wanted to ask everybody too, like there was a lot of stuff I left out, and I just wanted to see how y'all liked the lesson. So
yeah, do number 2, right? Yeah, part 2, encore. Look, fruit the lead. Yeah, fruit the lead.
Brother Dreno, man, you be blowing my mind with your lessons, man. Your little science lessons, man, they be so deep, man. It's so I can't explain it, man. The way that you connect science with the Torah, which a lot of people believe it's the opposite. It's either one or the other. It's either the Bible or science. Like you always say, the Most High made science. So how is not science within the Most High? You know what I mean? So that's how they coexist.
That's right.
They just using different words on you and everything and trying to separate the two. That's the whole purpose of, that's part of the battle up in heaven that we read in Revelation. When it says war in heaven, you know what I mean? That's part of the battle right there to throw you off. They think there's something different between science and the Most High.
Yeah, I know.
You understand
They
that
just
science, you'll understand that it opens a whole lot. You'll understand a whole lot with understanding.
Because it's y'all. Because it's y'all. They ended up with this term that science, so they can say we're scientists, so we are the experts of science. So you're saying they're the experts of y'all.
Because in the book of Josephus, it says that Abraham took science, astrology, mathematics down to Egypt. Right, but I'm gonna read out the what they call the Ketuvim, the writings.
That's the writing,
right? But it's actually Daniel. It says, Daniel first chapter. It says, children in whom was no blemish. That's this Nebuchadnezzar asking for the children of Israel that he wanted handpicked for himself. He says, children in whom was no blemish, but were favored and skillful in all wisdom and cunning and knowledge and understanding science, and as such had an ability in them to stand in the king's palace, and whom they may teach in learning the tongues of the Chaldeans. Wow. So we always had these knowledges and these, we can see it all in the Torah. So obviously we had them, they were just encoded inside terms that people could understand. Right.
You know what I always said? Oh, go ahead, Mo. Bring that out, Mo. Tikva.
I don't know. When y'all was talking about the being a fruit, what the fruit was supposed to bring forth, it made me think of Isaiah 26:17. We just read a devotion, but it said, as a pregnant woman about to give birth, rest and cries out in her pain, so were we in your presence, Yah. We were with child, we breathed in labor, but we gave birth to when? We have not brought salvation to the earth, and the people of the world have not come to life. So just making sure that we are bringing life through our people, or even our children, our family, even just a random coworker, just any person that's coming across, bringing some type of bringing something forth. When a woman is pregnant and she's about to give birth, she's expecting to give birth to a baby, not to. When you see women who they're going through when they had a stillborn, that even though they didn't know this baby, they knew this baby. They expected to have this child and for until they leave up out of here. They didn't expect to give birth to a baby. So if we were planning with this guy in that way, we're we got to think of us as like a pregnant woman. That's supposed to be. We want to see what we want to bring forth something and not nothing.
So you still supposed to be putting her as a pregnant woman?
Yeah,
no. But you want to feel most of them are impregnated up here.
Okay, I just wanted to go back to since the floor is open for commentary, correct? Okay, so I just wanted to go back to the two monkeys basically because I was holding it in because I didn't know about it. As far as the one that was raised by the mother and the one that was separated and basically put into adoption. So it kind of goes off you're into science and psychology. It kind of goes into the nature versus nurture debate, which I'm pretty sure you're familiar with. When you take somebody and white people do it a lot. If they have twins, they'll separate them at birth just to do a study on how they're brought up versus, is it in their nature to be this way based off the genes that they come from, or are they going to fall into a nurture based off what's being put in front of them based on their environment? So for the monkey that was raised by the surrogate, it's kind of so it's not it's similar to the situation, but not exactly alike. So basically, when it's dysfunctional, as far as the monkey that was raised by the surrogate, because he's telling it basically, well, I did what I did what I was supposed to do. All I did was raise you, I took care of you, and it felt like there was no nurture needed because all I did was provide food, shelter, and water for you. I thought that was all I was supposed to do, And so that's kind of when he brought out the scripture about the dysfunctional family in Deuteronomy 28, a lot of us, we see these things that's going on in our, as far as the curses, we understand the curses and we're not doing anything to change it within the faith. So people, you know, I put up a post, I shared a post, I'm sorry, because it had a picture of little Bill and their family. And somebody captioned it was like, this was a show where the wife wasn't light skinned, wasn't lighter than her husband. And I'm like, why does that matter? She's black. He's a black woman married to his black wife. And it's a functional family. Like, we grew up in dysfunctional households, and instead of people trying to break those curses, all they're focusing on is the skin tone of these women. Like, let's just get back to functional things within our families, like break the generational curses. A lot of us who come from dysfunctional families, myself included, I did whatever I could to make sure that a dysfunctional family doesn't come from me. But some people can see that. They know they come from out of dysfunctional households, and when they see function, it's dysfunctional to them. So they assume that, okay, just because you're a certain way and you're in this, you know, you're in this functionality, that's a form of dysfunction, because they don't understand what function is. So it's a battle between like good and evil, basically. You know, it's like you constantly fighting, like trying to get people to understand, like, you can't be, just because that's what you come from, it does not have to be who you are. You know, just don't succumb to your circumstances. With the, you know, I just had to bring that out because, you know, I thought that was just something to overlook. You know, yeah, you gotta break the curse. Like, if you understand we under the curse, what can you do to change it? Reverse the curse. Reverse the curse. Like, you have the power to stop it, and you don't. You'd rather just continue. Right.
I don't know if there's another one done where.
Is there any way she could speak up or get closer to the mic so everybody can hear her in the recording?
That's what I say. Go ahead again.
Talk how you normally talk when you're talking to your siblings.
Anyways, they had two moms that had like a real like soft. They weren't like actual moms. They were like robots, but like it was like a soft, plush one that gave more like nurturing love. That like that it didn't like give that monkeys what they needed to survive. They gave more like the loving side of it and nature side of it. And then there's another part where the robot just gave it like this food, its water, and that's pretty much it. It couldn't comfort it much because it's kind of like rough and hard. And whenever they would take this thing, they would put something into the cage with the monkey, and it would pretty much scare the monkey. And no matter how much like survival tactics the other mom gave it, they would always run back to the nurturing mother instead of going to the mother that was teaching them survival more. And I just thought like that kind of just shows how like both sides are technically needed, but no matter what, we're always going to go back to that loving side that you're taught.
You know what? When I was talking to was a guy at Homewood, I don't know if you might know it, famous Pastor Tom, forward dude at church and everything. I met, well, he like my aunt. My aunt was one of them running the ministry of Human Center. I used to go up there and speak. But like when I was explaining to him, when he was talking about, he was bragging about cemetery school. I call it cemetery school, which is seminary school. And I said, well, you got to think about this. Even the Apostle Paul was knocked off the road to Damascus on a horse. Yeshua ain't say, hey, first go to this school and learn about me. You know? So what I was trying to tell him is, I said, I find it strange. I understand when it says all are called, but only a few are chosen. I understand when the word says my people perish for lack of knowledge. Because there's certain type of people that Jane think they might not have it as great as others. So what we do is we settle for less. We'd rather go to church on Sunday and listen to what pastors say, and through Monday through Saturday say, oh, he preached a good sermon. Go back to carnal living, you know, when they can actually study themselves. 2 Timothy, study and show yourself approved, a workman and not need to be ashamed, but rightly dividing the word of truth. That applies to everybody. You know, we're actually, Now the thing is, when I think about us as a whole, us right here, and how much we study, it's no wonder we cannot sit here and say, you're less wiser than her, or I'm more wiser than you. No, we study so much that we are moving in the scholarly fields where Dreno might be the hand, but Naya might be the feet. Derek, you are the heart because you unprotect. And eat too. And then everybody else could be the arm,
right,
eyes, ears. Now, I can't tell you, Ariella, if you're the eyes and I'm the ear, you need to stop looking and start listening. Yeah. And you can't tell me the same thing. You can't say, well, you need to stop listening and look.
Right.
But if we work together,
they complement each other.
Guess what? We can get to the end of the race,
Yeah.
the marathon.
Yeah.
We can get to the cross. We can shoot to the goal together. Because like the men say, we like boats run. When we come together, we unstoppable,
What you
baby.
said, D-Spot, right? I mean,
Doc Spock.
B is Doc Spock too.
Doc Sprocket.
This way, we all are.
We all are. Because we all in our own right.
Because he is.
And we complement each other, man, because one man can't teach everything.
Right.
That's why I love y'all, man.
I mean, that church analogy is what I was going to say is people that because they rather go to church and hear pastors move than to deal with the truth that's really heavy.
Right.
You know what I mean? He does have that loving side.
Mm-hmm.
He also got that strong. I'm not playing with you. I'm coming and chop people's heads off.
Right.
Nobody want to deal with that aspect.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody just want to believe because it's more comforting that he loves you. He loves everybody. That's a major problem with our people, and that's why a lot of them keep those scales on their eyes because they don't want to deal with facts.
Right.
You know what I mean? Once a fact is given, then it's like, okay, that's the way you see it. That's the way you put it.
Right. Got changed.
You know what I mean? Everybody, they're comfortable in their sin. So if I continue to appease my sin, I'm going to stay in it. Once you jar me out of my comfort, now I got to deal with what my sin really is. And now, like you said earlier, now I got to come out of my comfort and I got to transform. And I got to deal with the hurt of being in this situation and letting that go. And a lot of what people do.
And one of the most things that's not taught today, you know what one of the most subjects is neglected to be taught on? Hell, condemnation, eternal punishment. You know what? This does need to be brought out too, because everything is not grander and doing look, man, our salvation's at stake. You know, we got to let these people know and will of ourselves. And if we don't do this according to y'all, there is a lake of fire. You know, it's like my father and I go at it. He's a Jehovah's Witness. And so I'm like, Pops, if there's a place of paradise and reward, don't you think there's a place of punishment and torture? Yeah. I said, you can't have one without the other, man. You know? So what I'm just saying is that's what needs to be brought out more. Repentance and deliverance. Because we're living in these last days, man. And it's serious, man. It's crunch time.
It is.
It's crunch time.
It just reminded me of a movie that me and Derek had watched a few days ago. What was the name of the movie? I was telling you that one part a lot of people reference. But in the movie,
The Mist.
The Mist. We watched The Mist, you know, and you had the lady there who was telling them, you know, the punishments of that y'all was going to bring. And one of the statements that one of the ladies made was, you talking about that Old Testament God.
Yeah, Old Testament.
Old Testament or something.
They're
She
like
said,
that
like,
today.
don't nobody want to hear the wrath of Yah. They only want to think of the sweet side of him.
Everybody died for
He loves everybody.
Can I speak on that real fast? You know, it was something about hearing "Thus saith Yahweh" or "Thus saith Yah" that turned not just us off today, but it turned our ancestors off. You know, through my studies, I learned that the Northern Kingdom, they wanted to leave. Man, they was tired of hearing "Thus saith Yahweh." During the time of the Maccabees, we had some brothers like Alchemists and Bacchus, or however you pronounce his name, who were Israelites who was, you know, they totally wanted to make a covenant with the heathens or the Gentiles round about, because They was tired of hearing thus saith Yah. So when you say that people don't want to hear about what they try to say the Old Testament God, no, that's not the Old Testament God. You know, we want sweet Jesus. You know what I mean?
I was going to say that. Yeah.
And through my understanding, and this is just my understanding, you know, this same sweet Jesus that you talking about is the Old Testament God. And he ain't really playing like that. Like he's the same as yesterday as he is today. You know what I mean?
Come on.
He ain't playing like that. But you know, people don't want to hear that. Thus saith. You know, they don't want to hear that type of stuff. They don't want to hear. That's what turns them off about the camps on the corner. Now, even if the camp was on the corner and didn't, you know, pick out anybody personally and disrespect them. But just saying thus saith Yahweh or thus saith Yah, you know, that get under people's skin.
Yeah, they're scared of that.
They skip that scripture that he's coming back like a lion.
Why has Jesus got a sword? Why does sweet Jesus be like, I have a sword? He got something to do with Jesus, didn't it? Hey, go ahead.
I mean, why is everybody doing everything they can not to go to jail, but everything they can to go to the fire?
Bam.
Because they don't believe in the lake of fire, bruh.
Yeah, they believe in jail, but
they can see jail. That's what it is. They can see jail. They can't see hell. That's what it is.
The greatest deception ever created was that one don't exist.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Society ran with it. Like, oh, well, if he don't exist, then all I got to do is believe and love and I'm good, then I don't got to worry about these so-called sins that y'all keep saying I'm committing. I believe. The problem is, sweet Jesus coming back like, oh, y'all thought it was sweet, huh? I got something for y'all.
But I'm saying you can base like what he was saying, they fear jail more than hell because they can see it. But you can base jail off of hell. Like, okay, the Most High, he chastening us, and the same with the system. They send us in, we get the retribution or the recidivism rate where they believe you're gonna be coming back, like you a flight risk, you're gonna keep going in and out the system before they give you life, where you die in this prison. That's the same with hell. Like, okay, you had all these warnings here on earth, and then it's the eternal punishment, a life sentence that you receive where you can't undo it. Like, you just don't know that for the rest of your life.
The thing about that, like you said, you got to understand the carnal before you can understand the spiritual. If you're so stuck on the carnal, you ain't never going to get there. You know what I mean? At some point, just like we say with people that just come just away, you're dealing with milk. Eventually, you got to graduate to be. You can't be 30 years old still drinking formula. You know what I mean? Life, you got to evolve. So if you continue to go to the spiritual whorehouse every Sunday and continue to be fed this Similac, and you 60 years old and you've been doing the same thing, going to church, come out of church, do the same sentence. Go to church, come out of church, do the same sentence. Eventually, you don't get no more grace. Grace will run out on everybody at some point. The question is, when did you start to study to show yourself approved? Because then you wouldn't even be in the spiritual house. Right. And now hell becomes a little more real. And the consequences of your actions become a little more real. And now you go through that hurt period of separating that old man from the new man and transforming and walking righteous.
And I think they go back to what O'Day said, because he was like, we need to be teaching repentance and deliverance. Because when I came into the faith 2 years ago, I wasn't taught that. I was immediately told, keep the law, and whatever you're going through is gonna come off. And I quickly learned through my separation out of camp that that's not the truth. Right. So there's a difference between putting away your sin by like just saying, I'm just gonna stop eating pork, besides being delivered from it, where now you see it disgusts you like the Most High, like YAH said over the phone. Because I get it to them that I was like, y'all don't see the seafood boils on Facebook and just go to staring at them. Like I be in a trance, not even knowing I be staring at the food. And so Derek, being my spiritual brother, he was like, y'all used to tear that seafood up. I said, like it was nothing. Like it was, but I didn't realize I was staring at it and not knowing I'm staring at it. Like, why am I staring at this food? Because it's the difference between being delivered from something and putting it away. Right. You're not doing it anymore. That's what Christ was talking about. The outward man. You perfected your hands from not sinning, but your heart is still towards this thing that displeases the Most High. So we got to learn how to teach our people that we got to learn to hate what he hates, because if you still have a desire for it, you're still in sin. You're still in sin. You can't, okay, I taught my hands not to do it. I taught my mouth not to eat it. I got to pray for deliverance from this particular thing. And our people are not being taught deliverance. We're taught as soon as we keep the law, we're fine. And we're being taught how to be Pharisees by doing that. Because now we can say, I'm not eating pork, but you are, but you want it. You know what I'm saying? We're taught how to be Pharisees. And I think that's something that has been tarnished so heavily with this faith, and why the Christians stay away from it. Because, yeah, you're not doing it, but you have this abrasive anger to where you want to see me go to hell just because I'm doing it versus you're not. And that's not the spirit of the Mashiach. So that's where we got to come in and break that barrier, because it is a Pharisee strong spirit that has been taught and tarnished our walk.
In Israel.
It's a narcissistic, abusive spirit. Yeah.
Your heart's far away from me, and that's like one of my biggest battles is the heart. And the closer you get, the closer I build out, it'll be shown to me within myself, like this ain't right for me. That's all through the scriptures. Like, man, they say it's about me speak my name, but their heart
is far from me. We have to teach our people deliverance. They're not being taught deliverance and repentance. We're taught just wear the fringes, keep the law, come to Shabbat, show up at the feast days, blow the shofar, read 3, 4, 5 times a day. They don't. What is it doing to your inward man? What is it doing?
I was in dialogue the other day.
Read all day.
I was in dialogue the other day with brother from ISUPK, right? And it was like a handful of sisters and a few brothers. Like, I wish I had discernment to know who's real and who ain't is real. I said, I can do that for you right now. I said, watch me shake this tree. All you gotta mention is look at it. I shook the tree, all kind of fruit just dropped out of it. I said, sit and watch. Oh, but no, it's about that. I said, now, I'm not saying that it was a law. I'm not saying it's a sin. But it's not a sin if you and Ariella choose not to do it. The thing is, these brothers are thirsty, so they'll push you into it and make it seem like it's a law. I said, those are the ones you look at, because their mentality is so stuck on polygamy, the majority of them was ushered into the truth with it. But they neglect repentance and deliverance. You understand?
Yeah.
So that was my whole point.
They haven't transformed their mind at all from their world. They're still stagnant. It's just a lot. There's just a lot of people are being. I feel like they're being torn off, basically being made into tares based off how the word is presented to them, and they're using the Hamashiach as a platform to teach this wrong doctrine. Like, the Hamashiach said, "Look, are we holier than him? Are we more righteous than him? Look how he talks to this lady, or look what he said to these people."
No, he got mad at me because I said, well, we talk about the origins of Easter, right? People celebrate it. If they getting struck down right now, no. You didn't get struck down when you celebrated Christmas. I said, okay, look at the origins of it. Look at the origins of it. How you say his name? Lamech. He was against YAH. He was the first one to take on 2 wives to disrespect him. You know what the disrespect was? The 2 shall become one flesh. Oh yeah, not over my dead body. Watch this. 2 wives on him. You know how Hebrews is. Monkey see, monkey do. Yeah. I want to get with that too. That looks fun. So it was tolerated, and it was used for a reason. For barren women, brothers, wives that died, that want to take on family names, and so forth. You know, so then they just went left field with it. That's all. I don't understand.
Does anybody else got anything else? Anybody on Zoom?
Nah, brother, we good.
All right, so with that, we're gonna go ahead and pray out.
Sorry, y'all.
Okay, so who's gonna pray us out?
Okay.
Okay.
D to the
O to the
east.
To the east.
We get in there and get this prayer out.
Drink. Come on, Billy. The east, my Billy to the east. Well, you turn too.
Big boy.
Right on the bathroom. Good shit. Vegan chili.
First of all, there's no meat in there.
Everybody takes some vegan chili.
That's not.
Oh, you made some more?
Oh, we ready?
No, we got left out more.
You ready to drink?
Yep, we ready.
All right.
For the whole bowl.
All right. Hallelujah. Hallelujah. Yeah. Oh, Heavenly Father, Yahweh, I come boldly with your throne of grace, thanking you for the ending of the Shabbat studies, Father. It was so powerful and what's needed, Father. See, sometimes we need some meat to go with the milk, so we gradually know, so we can in tune in everything that's about you, Father. So I thank you for using Dreno as a vessel to deliver that prolific message that we all need to hear. And I pray for everybody that's in this room. I pray for my family on Zoom. Father, that we carry out the rest of this week that's coming, starting tomorrow, the first day. Father, it's righteous walking. Please, Father, let us look into ourselves to find out what we need to change to be more appealing to you and not to the human eye. Father, for you know our hearts and you know our mind and you know our hearts are deceitful above all organs. So, Father, create in us a contrite spirit, Father, that we may repent, turn away, be sorrowful for everything we've done to each other as well as other people, and proclaim it to you to forgive us as well as them. I ask and pray that you bless the wonderful food that's been prepared for us, the physical food, Father. But I thank you for the spiritual food as well, but we're about to partake of the physical food. I ask and I pray you bless it, bless the hands prepare it, and the mouths that feed. And let everyone who leave this place and go back to their humble dwellings go with a safe tone. In the name of Yeshua HaMashiach, I thank you. Hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah.